Chapter 5:34. Chase. The army chased after the Uzun. After chasing for another 10 li and killing several thousand Uzun soldiers, they finally stopped. The torrential rain limited their vision, and coupled with the fact that the Uzun were focused on escaping, even Wang Chong could not completely wipe them out. However, the outcome of this battle had already exceeded everyone's expectations. 40,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers against 70,000 Uzun cavalry had only paid a price of 5 or 6,000, but they had managed to wipe out 50,000 Uzun cavalry. This sort of 10-1 victory was absolutely beyond everyone's expectations. The morale of the Annam Protectorate was currently high, and their desire for battle was at its peak. "Young master, what should we do next?" Several dozen li away from the mountain, the generals stopped and looked at Wang Chong through the heavy rain, their eyes brimming with respect. Wang Chong had neither an official nor a noble title, and he wasn't a member of the Annam Protectorate. For such a person to take command of the army as soon as he arrived was simply unthinkable. After all, given Wang Chong's age, there was probably no one in the army younger than him. Many of the generals were old enough to be his father, not to mention that 90% of the Annam Protectorate generals had never even seen him before. But at this time, no one cared about this. The battle between the army and Fenjie and Jiao Sero had not just begun. Previously, they had been completely suppressed. All the changes and twists in this battle had begun when this youth had ascended the mountain and taken command of the army. It could be said that without this youth, many of these people would have died on that mountain behind them. Heroes did not come from birth. At this time, no one cared about Wang Chong's age or whether or not he had an official title. This youth possessed an astonishing ability to command and art that far surpassed all those present. If there was one person who could lead everyone out of their current predicament, it would be this young man in front of them. In comparison, it was no longer important whether he was Wang Yan's youngest son or whether he had the token of the King of Song. This was the consensus of all the Annam Protectorate personnel present. For now, there's no need to worry about Jiao Sero and Fenjie. Our top priority is to find Lord Xinyu Zhongtong and meet up with them as quickly as possible. Wang Chong said without hesitation. He had thought about this a long time ago. The Annam Protectorate, his father, and his eldest brother, Wang Fu, led more than 80,000 men. The 40,000 men behind him were only a part of it. If they didn't find Xinyu Zhongtong and the others, they would definitely die if they ran into Huoshu Wuzong. But we don't even know where they are. Chen Shusun rode up from the rear, his expression grave. His armor had been soaked by the rain and had turned a greenish-gray color. In addition, our initial goal was to break out of the encirclement and leave, doing our best to preserve everyone's lives. If we turn back now, the risk is not small. Without the protection of the mountains, the terrain is disadvantageous. If we run into Uzun's men on flat ground, we'll probably die. In addition, Huoshu Wuzong and Uzun's armies are catching up. If we turn back to find Lord Xinyu and the others, we'll be delayed and run into Uzun's men. At that time, not only will we not be able to save anyone, our entire army will be wiped out. This is not Lion City. From the moment we left Lion City, we no longer have any cities or natural defenses to rely on. His words immediately caused everyone to fall silent. That's right. From the moment we left Lion City, there was no turning back. In addition, since Fenjie and the others have found us, Huoshu Wuzong and Jelifeng probably know where we are as well. It's only a matter of time before the army catches up. The longer we delay here, the more danger the army will be in. Another officer of the Annam Protectorate army said, "The Annam Protectorate cannot be allowed to be buried here. If our army is wiped out, the Annam Protectorate will truly exist only in name." The other Annam Protectorate commanders agreed. In truth, before we even began this operation, everyone had already understood what was going to happen. This time, the Mengshi Yusang army has already gathered its momentum and is unstoppable. It's simply not something we can resist. It's simply impossible for everyone to escape unscathed. Some people are fated to not be able to escape. Everything will depend on their own luck. This is the case for us, and it is the same for everyone else. Lord Xinyu should also understand this principle. Whether they can escape or not will depend on themselves. Another officer of the Annan Protectorate Army rode forward and stepped forward. What followed was a long period of silence. The pitter-patter of the rain resounded in everyone's ears as the bean-sized droplets pattered against the armor. Wang Chong said nothing, his gaze sweeping over the officers of the southwest, his brow slowly creasing. I didn't think that Xinyu Zhongtong would lose the support of the people in the Annan Protectorate so quickly. With Zhangzhou Jianxiong entering the capital and Xinyu Zhongtong rushing to take the position, he might not have been defeated, but after the defeat in the southwest and the deaths of more than 100,000 elite soldiers on the Urai Plains, there are probably many people who are dissatisfied with him. It's just that they haven't said it out loud yet. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. He had never been too clear about the circumstances of the Annan Protectorate's invasion, but now that he thought about it, there had probably been quite a few voices of dissatisfaction with him, and there had even been quite a few who were dissatisfied with Zhangzhou Jianxiong's choice of him. The defeat at Irai had caused Xinyu Zhongtong to lose the support of the people. The opposition of so many people this time was only a way to vent their dissatisfaction. The army hasn't even gotten out of its predicament, but the generals in the Annan Protectorate are already in so much conflict. This is definitely not a good thing. Wang Chong mentally sighed. He finally understood why a large portion of the Annan Protectorate soldiers had followed his big brother and father, and not Xinyu Zhongtong. In all fairness, Xinyu Zhongtong had to bear a great deal of responsibility for the Battle of the Urai Plains, but that was only because Xinyu Zhongtong's talent was not enough for the position of Protector General. Zhangzhou Jianxiong's selfishness had led to this result. But if one put aside this point, Xinyu Zhongtong was actually an excellent general. In the upheaval of the southwest, he had not committed treason, nor had he ever had such thoughts. His lack of ability had led him to such a high position, and this was the final result. Thus, Wang Chong actually didn't have any ill will toward him. Buzz! As these thoughts flitted through his mind, Wang Chong quickly had an idea. His right hand reached into his bosom and took out something. It was not the dazzling token of the King of Song, but a pitch-black object. Lord Protector General's token. The generals were initially confused by Wang Chong's actions, but when they saw the black tiger-headed token that Wang Chong had raised in the air, all of them trembled and hurriedly bowed. Several of the generals who had opposed the most ferociously jumped off their horses and got down on one knee. I didn't think that young master would have Lord Protector General's token. Does Lord have any orders? The generals lowered their heads, their respect tinged with panic and unease. Not even Wang Chong's the King of Song's token could produce such an effect. Zhangzhou Jianxiong had been Protector General of the Southwest for several decades, ruling with an iron fist. He was known as the Tiger of the Southwest. With him present, not even Meng Shizhao or Yu Sang dared to act recklessly, all of them feeling extremely apprehensive. Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen had only started this war after Zhangzhou Jianxiong had been transferred to the capital. One could easily imagine Zhangzhou Jianxiong's prestige in the southwest. Zhangzhou Jianxiong regarded the southwest as his personal territory, and one could see this from the scene before them. He had been the Minister of War for many years, and he had been the Minister of War for many months, but the generals of the southwest still addressed him as Protector General, not Lord Minister. It seems like asking Zhangzhou Jianxiong for his personal token was the right decision. Seeing this sight, Wang Chong couldn't help but sigh. Xinyu Zhongtong had already lost the support of the people, and the resentment of the generals was too deep. To put it another way, the Southwest was essentially a group of dragons without a leader. Not even the King of Song's token could force them to submit. But Zhangzhou Jianxiong's token, this was the only way to resolve this conflict and have the generals of the Southwest listen to his orders. Seeing the token is like seeing the person. Lord Zhangzhou has told all of you this before. Wang Chong calmly said. Not even he realized that a faint pressure was slowly emanating from his body. Before leaving for the Southwest, I discussed it in detail with Lord Zhangzhou. His lordship has said that from the moment I arrive, I will have full authority to handle everything in the Southwest in his stead. Thus, anyone who dares to disobey will be executed first and reported later, and he will have full authority to deal with them. Understood? Wang Chang's voice was steady and dignified. At this moment, there was no trace of the childishness of a youth. Not even the veteran generals of the army could compare to him. Yes. Since young master has Lord Protector General's token, we will naturally follow young master's orders. Everyone lowered their heads, not even daring to breathe too loudly. Young master. On the side, Chen Shusun stared in a daze at this sight. The King of Song's token, Zhangqiu Jianqiong's token, ordinary people would not be able to obtain either of these two extremely important tokens, but Wang Chong had both of them. Chen Shusun had always believed that Wang Chong had acted on his own and run off to the southwest. But now, even he couldn't see the scene in front of him clearly. His young master seemed to be hiding more secrets than he had imagined. There's no need to follow orders. I just want to tell all of you one thing. The terrain of the southwest is flat, with few mountains and many hills. Do you really think that we can escape faster than Uzun's cavalry? From the very start, escaping the southwest and safely retreating was never a possibility. We have no choice but to resist. Chapter 5:35. Wang Chang's voice was deafening, and the mood instantly became much more oppressive. It was simply impossible to escape from the southwest. Even though everyone had already vaguely understood this, no one had said it out loud. Everyone had a sliver of hope in their hearts, until Wang Chong mercilessly shattered it. One could easily imagine what they were feeling at this moment. There's nothing to be done. The sooner we shatter this illusion, the sooner we can unite everyone. Otherwise, if we continue to hold on to this illusion, we'll all die here. Wang Chong quietly said to himself. The army had just won a victory and was in high morale, so they shouldn't have done this. But the internal conflicts within the Annam Protectorate made this operation fraught with danger. Only by shattering the unrealistic hopes in their hearts could the army suppress all the conflicts on the surface and unite. Only in this way could the Annam Protectorate be of any use. Someone had to do it. Since no one else could point it out, only Wang Chong could do it. But even if we stay, even if we hold the mindset that we'd rather die in glory than live in dishonor, we're no match for the Mengshi Yusang army. They have too many people. 100,000 against 500,000, with a considerable number of elite cavalry among them, we're simply no match for them. An Annam Protectorate general said, his expression gloomy. If we haven't tried, how can we know it's impossible? In addition, our goal isn't to defeat them, but to delay them until the imperial court's reinforcements arrive. Defeating them and resisting their attacks are two completely different concepts. Wang Chong sternly said, his eyes shining brightly. In addition, don't forget what the mission of the Annam Protectorate is. If we escape, what will happen to the people of the Southwest? The only reason the Southwest hasn't been plunged into misery and suffering yet is because we're holding back the Mengshi Yusang army. If they don't deal with us, Jialifeng and Hushu Wuzong won't be able to invade other places in peace. If we retreat, what will the people of the Southwest think of us? What will the imperial court think of us? Do you really think that preserving the main force of the Annam Protectorate can protect the Annan Protectorate? Can a protectorate army that can't protect the Southwest still be considered a protectorate army? Was there any meaning to their existence? Also, if I'm not mistaken, many of you are from the southwest of the empire, right? As soon as Wang Chong finished speaking, all the generals felt stifled. Can a protectorate army that can't protect the Southwest still be considered a protectorate army? No one had ever said these words to them, nor had they ever thought about them. But at this moment, even the most muddle-headed person knew that Wang Chong was absolutely right. An Annam Protectorate that could not protect the entire southwest border, even if everyone managed to survive, there was no longer a need for it to exist. Moreover, if the nearly 1 million civilians of the Southwest were to be delivered to the iron hooves of the Mengshi Yusang army and have all of them flee, all the people of the Annam Protectorate would be cursed and despised by the world. What kind of humiliation was that? The generals of the Annan Protectorate instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Young Master's warning is correct. We were foolish. At this point in this war, there's no way out. Either the enemy dies or we die. All of them inwardly rejoiced. The Tang dynasty was famed for its martial prowess, and as a soldier, all of them had their own pride. This was especially so for the Annam Protectorate, which had suppressed Mengshi Zhao and Uzun for so many years, and whose name had spread throughout the southwest. If they really ended up being cursed and cursed by tens of thousands of people, they would be better off dead. But even if we're willing to stay, how do we resolve the problem of food? The Arai Plains and the sturdy walls of Lion City should have been the best place to hold. If we hadn't run out of food, we would never have chosen to break out. Tens of thousands of men and horses. Every day, they would have to feed the horses. This was not a small figure. How do we resolve this problem? The emperor does not use starving soldiers. If we don't have enough food, Uzun wouldn't even need to fight us. He could just surround us. If we were to sacrifice ourselves for this reason, wouldn't we have died in vain? A black-faced and bearded general sternly said, his expression grave. Although he didn't want to say it, the problem of food was precisely the Annam Protectorate's greatest problem. Lion City had already run out of food. The problem now was that if this problem was not resolved, the hard-won victory they had just obtained would immediately crumble. Haha, there's no need for you to worry about this problem. I only have a way to resolve it. Wang Chong chuckled at this question. Before the three armies move, the provisions must go first. If he hadn't even resolved this problem and done his homework, he would have never come to the southwest. The generals glanced at each other, and even Chen Shu-san appeared surprised at Wang Chong's words. It was clear that he hadn't been aware of this matter before. Since that's the case and young master has Lord Protector General's token, we will naturally follow Milord's orders. The generals of the southwest all had submissive expressions. Since Wang Chong had Zhangzhou Jianqiong's token, he represented Zhangzhou Jianqiong, so no one objected. They were only worried about the problem of food. Since this problem was resolved, everything else was easy to discuss. Drip, drip, drip. Just as they were speaking, the sound of heavy hooves and a powerful aura rapidly approached from behind. Wang Yan rode a huge black horse, his cloak fluttering in the wind. He had a dignified expression on his face as he slowly walked over from behind. Despite the majestic rain, not a single drop of water could get within 3 zhang of him. Milord! Seeing Wang Yan, everyone revealed a look of respect. Father! Wang Chong's heart trembled as he hurriedly lowered his head. Although he was no longer the same as he was in the past and had made illustrious achievements, Wang Chong still instinctively feared his father. You've done a good job this time. Wang Yan's gaze swept over Wang Chong, and he gave a slight nod of his head in praise. Father! Wang Chong's heart trembled. Although it was only a few indifferent words, only Wang Chong knew how much affirmation this seemingly nonchalant, "You did well this time," contained. This was not some minor matter of eating properly in the capital, nor was it some petty squabble of wits against Yao Feng in vast Crane Pavilion. The military is an important matter of the state, a place of life and death, a path of survival. It cannot be ignored. The battlefield had never been a place that could be trifled with or joked about. Thus, the large-scale, cruel, and bloody battlefield had always been a forbidden ground for the descendants of the Wang clan. The descendants of the Wang clan were not allowed to casually step onto the battlefield. His grandfather, big uncle, and father were all extremely strict on this point. Even someone as talented as his big brother, Wang Fu, had been severely reprimanded by his father when he first entered the battlefield. Being able to say, "not bad," was already an enormous affirmation of his own abilities. It was clear that his father no longer minded that he had intruded into the southwest and intervened in the war of the empire. I heard your conversation just now. Wang Yan had no idea what Wang Chong was thinking. His gaze paused on Wang Chong for a few moments before quickly shifting to the generals of the southwest. Milord! The generals began to listen attentively, expressions of deep respect on their faces. On this battlefield, the one whose status was second only to Xinyu Zhongtong was Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan. But unlike Xinyu Zhongtong, although Wang Yan came from the Wang clan, he had relied on his own strength to climb to his current level. Everyone in the world knew this. Moreover, the Wang clan father and son had placed themselves in danger to save the Annam Protectorate. This was also why the generals of the southwest respected the Wang clan and were willing to listen to their orders in battle. Chong'e is right about one thing. Lord Xinyu must be saved. The other Annam Protectorate must be saved. Just do as he says. Wang Yan's voice was concise and comprehensive, his words setting the tone for this debate. Yes, my lord. The generals roared in agreement. But my lord, the sky is dark and the rain is pouring down. We have no idea where Lord Xinyu and the others are. After a few moments of hesitation, the commander of the Annam Protectorate suddenly spoke up. There's no need to worry about that. Wang Chong laughed as he suddenly galloped forward. Others might not know where Xinyu Zhongtong and the others were, but how could he not know? The eagle. Cree. With Wang Chong's voice, a massive eagle leaped from the eagle's shoulder. Under the flabbergasted gazes of the generals, it flew through the air toward the southeast. Meanwhile, in another place amidst the torrential rain, Xinyu Zhongtong's army was in grave danger. Bong bong bong. The beating of the war drums was extremely urgent. Under the sky, on a dark mountain, countless Annam Protectorate soldiers were surrounded by the Uzun cavalry. Unlike Fenjie and Jiao Sero, the Uzun's attacks were orderly, coming wave after wave like an endless tide. At this moment, the pressure on the Annam Protectorate was unimaginable. Damn it, damn it, damn it. On the summit, the black-bearded Xinyu Zhongtong's eyes were blood-red as he hammered his large fists against his knees. He bore the primary responsibility for the Southwestern War's current state. The only reason he had not committed suicide to atone for his crimes was that the Annam army had not yet been completely wiped out. But it would probably be soon. Why is it like this? Huoshu Wuzong, Jelifeng, you're too bold. Even if I, Xinyu Zhongtong, am not a match for you, there will come a day when you will pay the price. Xinyu Zhongtong's heart surged with rage and hatred. He was the one who had suffered the greatest impact in this war and was the most astonished. The Annam Protectorate had stood guard for many years and lived in harmony with Mengshi Zhao and Uzun. But Jelifeng's sudden attack had destroyed a city, instantly shattering this hard-won peace. When he had first received the news, Xinyu Zhongtong had not dared to believe it. He had even thought it was a misrepresentation. But the ruined city would not lie, and the corpses strewn all over the ground would not lie. In this war, Xinyu Zhongtong had always believed that he was acting as a punishment and that he was facing only Mengshi Zhao's army. Thus, when Daluan Ruozhen and Huoshu Wuzong led the Uzun army out, one could easily imagine the shock in Xinyu Zhongtong's heart. He had never imagined that Mengshi Zhao and Uzun would be so bold. Zhangqiu Jianxiong had just left the southwest and entered the capital, and they had already started this war, an all-out war. Xinyu Zhongtong, surrender. You're no match for us. A voice came from the base of the mountain. Although it was spoken in the language of the Central Plains, it was extremely cold and harsh. Bullshit. Xinyu Zhongtong suddenly stood up, his eyes bulging. Huoshu Wuzong, don't get too cocky. The Annam Protectorate will never submit to anyone. Not in Lion City, and certainly not now. If you want to defeat us, you'll have to rely on your own abilities. His voice rumbled down from the summit like a peal of thunder, spreading over the earth. Even the curtain of rain rippled in response to Xinyu Zhongtong's furious roar. As you wish. Far away from the summit, Huoshu Wuzong, his expression cold and aloof, his black and red armor pointed at the heavens. Attack. Chapter 5:36. Voila. Rain poured down, covering the sky and covering the earth. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, Wang Chong had to admit that the development of the situation had far exceeded his expectations. Reporting, Uzun's forces have been discovered ahead. Their main force is over 100,000. Reporting, Lord Xinyu has been discovered. All of the Annam Protectorate has been surrounded. Reporting, it has been confirmed that they are being led by the Uzun Great General, Huoshu Wuzong. One by one, the scouts galloped over on their horses, bringing news that no one wanted to hear the most. However, good things never come in pairs, and this was not the only predicament they faced. Reporting, Fenjie, Jiao Sero, and the Uzun's main force have been discovered in the southwest. They've formed a pincer formation and are rapidly approaching. In just a few short breaths, another Annam Protectorate scout arrived on horseback. Heavy rain poured down from the sky, striking the armor of the army with a clattering sound. For a moment, the atmosphere in the army was heavy, and no one spoke. Wushu Wuzong was a name that no one wanted to hear. The army hurried over, but in the end, the scene that no one wanted to see the most had occurred. Not only had Wushu Wuzong caught up to the army led by Xinyu Zhongtong, but Fenjie and Jiao Sero, who had previously been defeated and driven away, had once again arrived. The situation had become extremely unfavorable to them. "Young master, what should we do now?" Almost reflexively, an Annam Protectorate general swallowed and turned his neck with difficulty to look at Wang Chong. In this battle, the scouts of the Annan Protectorate army that had managed to survive were the elites of the elites, and with the guidance of the giant eagles, they were able to discover the enemy's tracks much earlier than the others. But this wouldn't take too long. Once Fenjie, Jiasiluo, and Wushu Huizong's army of 100,000 discovered their army and attacked from both sides, the only thing awaiting them would be death. Time was of the essence, and everyone had to make a decision as soon as possible. However, at this moment, there was nothing he could do, and he could only pin his hopes on Wang Chong. If there was one person who could lead everyone out of this situation, it would be Wang Chong. Young master. Point 1, 2, 3. All eyes were on Wang Chong. As the holder of Zhangzhou Jianxiong's token, Wang Chong represented the highest authority in the southwest. At this point, only he could command the troops and convince them. Wang Chong deeply furrowed his brow. Given the circumstances before him, even he could not make a decision so quickly. "I thought that Fenjie and Jiao Sero had already been driven away, but I didn't expect them to make a complete circle and come back. They must have received the news and rushed back to rendezvous with us." Wang Chong was silent, his mind in turmoil. He had already been shocked that Wushu Wuzong had been able to catch up to Xinyu Zhongtong's troops so quickly. But he hadn't expected Fenjie and Jiao Sero to come back so quickly. Just a few hours ago, Wang Chong had clearly sent them off in a completely different direction from where they were now. He hadn't expected that after making a complete circle, they would miraculously appear here. The Uzun army had always been numerous, and if they added valiant generals like Fenjie and Jiao Sero to the mix, the Annam Protectorate would essentially be fighting a decisive battle with the Uzun army. The army was completely defenseless, and this was not what Wang Chong wanted. Moreover, Wang Chong would no longer be able to use many of the trump cards he had prepared. Moreover, the Annam Protectorate's current mission was to delay the Mengshi, Yusang army, not engage in a decisive battle to the death. On a strategic level, this was completely different from Wang Chong's plan. "Chonga, if you have any ideas, just say them. No matter what, I and the other generals will support you." A familiar voice sounded beside his ear. Wang Yan stroked his beard and suddenly opened his mouth. Although his voice was cold and indifferent, it felt warm in Wang Chong's ears. "Let me think about it." Wang Chong raised his head to the lightning in the sky, his mind in turmoil as countless thoughts flitted through his mind. Time was short, and the Annam Protectorate's current situation could not be any worse. Wang Chong had to think of a solution as quickly as possible. Surround the enemy and attack the reinforcements. After what seemed like both a moment and like countless eons, Wang Chong suddenly spat out a name that none of them had heard before. "Lord Xinyu's side can still hold for a while. There won't be any problems. But Fenjie and Jiao Sero are powerful foes that cannot be dealt with. No matter what, we can't let them meet up. In addition, whether or not we can save Lord Xinyu and the others will depend on this battle." An astonishing light flashed through Wang Chong's eyes as he spoke. The situation in the southwest could not be any worse, but nothing was absolute. There was always a chance of survival. In Wang Chong's view, after experiencing the bitter battles of the otherworldly invaders, there was no longer any situation in which death was certain. In addition, the Uzun cavalry has more than 200,000. If we subtract Fenjie and Jiao Sero's 70,000, there should still be around 160 to 70,000 left. But Lord Xinyu's side only has 100,000 at most. At least 60 to 70,000 are missing. There's no doubt that a considerable number of their troops have been lost in the storm. At the very least, they won't be able to rush over in a short time. And this is where our opportunity lies. As long as we can destroy Fenjie and then meet up with Lord Xinyu, our forces will not be much weaker than the Uzun. 90,000 against 100,000. I trust that all of you generals have experienced this sort of battle before. The first few words of Wang Chong's left the generals somewhat perplexed. But as they listened, their eyes began to shine brightly. Indeed, in terms of individual strength, the Annam Protectorate had never been inferior to Meng Shizhao's men or the Uzun of the Ngari royal lineage. On the contrary, they still had a slight advantage. Although the loss of 180,000 soldiers was a heavy blow to the Annam Protectorate, the surviving Annam Protectorate soldiers were all the cream of the crop. But the surviving soldiers of the Annan Protectorate army were the elites of the elites. Not only had their strength not decreased, it had actually gotten stronger. In this aspect, the Annam Protectorate soldiers were not so disadvantaged. Milord is right. If we meet up with Lord Xinyu's group, we will definitely be able to fight with Huoshu Wuzong. The generals looked at Wang Chong, their eyes blazing with fighting spirit. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, Wang Chong took the lead and galloped off. Chapter 537. Amidst the torrential downpour, two figures walked side by side through the rolling hills. Jiao Sero, the marshal is right in front of us. Have you thought about how you're going to explain things to him? Fenjie suddenly broke the silence as he led the remnants of his personal guards to Jiao Sero's side. I don't know. Jiao Sero's reply was straightforward. The battle had already ended, and Jiao Sero had long ago dispersed his white tiger avatar. At this time, it was clear that Jiao Sero was a large man who was 1.8 meters tall. His entire body was covered in muscles, completely unlike the short Uzun. The 9 sons of the dragon were all different. Even among the Uzun, not everyone was so short. Almost all the generals were tall and sturdy, completely different from the average Uzun. Right now, I don't know what to do either. On Jiao Sero's right earlobe hung thick black iron earrings. When the earrings clanked together, the atmosphere was rather oppressive. In the pursuit of Wang Yan and his son, 50,000 of the nearly 80,000 Uzun warriors had died, and nearly 70,000 had been wounded. This kind of crushing defeat was unprecedented. Everyone on the battlefield had been muddled from the fighting, and at least 80% of them had been unable to approach the front lines for more than 2 hours. It was only at the very end, when the main army had been routed, that they had encountered the pursuit of the Annam Protectorate. This kind of crushing defeat, to tell the truth, even now, Jiao Sero still felt deeply humiliated. The Uzun were famed for their ferocity and bravery, and the Uzun had never feared a strong enemy. But in this battle, from start to finish, the vast majority of them had been played around like headless flies. As the commander-in-chief, Jiao Sero could not escape the blame. That brat? He definitely isn't Wang Fu. Just who is he? Jiao Sero recalled the brat who was wearing Wang Fu's armor but was clearly not Wang Fu. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Although they had fought this entire battle in a muddled fashion, losing out in terms of intelligence, there was one thing that Jia Siluo had been clear about from start to finish. Everything had begun with that brat ascending the summit and taking over Wang Fu's military authority. Although he and Fenjie were both valiant generals, when it came to the art of war, they were worlds apart from that brat. They were on completely different levels. Although I don't know his background, he's definitely not an ordinary person. With that kid's age, if he doesn't have any background, it's impossible for him to command the Annam Protectorate. A light flickered in Fenjie's eyes. How could he not be puzzled by this matter? Fenjie rarely lost a battle. As the crown prince of Meng Shizhao, an existence that even the great Tang war god Wang Zhongxi praised, Fenjie was actually quite proud. Thus, although the Tang dynasty was far stronger than Meng Shizhao, Fenjie was a firm supporter of the war against the Tang dynasty. And the Battle of Irai had caused Fenjie's confidence to swell to the extreme. The Tang dynasty was set to lose, and the Annam Protectorate was also set to lose. Meng Shizhao could finally hold his head high and emerge from the shadow of the Tang dynasty. He could finally become a true crown prince. But it was at this moment that Fenjie suffered a defeat. And a major defeat at that. Fenjie had always been confident in this war against the Tang dynasty, but now, for the first time, a variable had appeared on the battlefield of the southwest, a variable that was completely out of his control and he had no idea how it would develop. This war is far from over. Sooner or later, we will fight again, Fenjie quietly said to himself. This defeat had been too sudden, and strictly speaking, the only Meng Shijiao's soldiers who had participated in the battle were his personal guards. A battle of this level didn't mean anything at all. And besides, he hadn't been the one commanding Uzun's soldiers. Given Fenjie's proud personality, he would never be willing to so easily admit defeat. But Fenjie's eyelids suddenly rose, a faint light flashing through his eyes. The Tang army that appeared behind us was clearly not from the Annam Protectorate, nor was it the army led by the Wang clan father and son. I can be sure that this army was definitely not from Lion City. Jiao Sero, didn't the Tang dynasty's reinforcements already be defeated by the great general? Yes, this is absolutely true. You don't think that the great general would lie, do you? Jiao Sero froze for a moment before suddenly realizing. 60,000 soldiers were completely wiped out, not a single one left? Fenjie asked. How could this be? That place isn't flat ground. Wiping them all out is easier said than done. Jiao Sero said. How do you put it? Even if we killed a portion of them, there were still quite a few fish that escaped the net? I understand. Jiao Sero, the Tang dynasty's capital, has an incredible opponent come this time. Fenjie narrowed his eyes, his gaze seeming to pierce through the gray mist to see something. Milord, there's a report from the front that the great general has discovered Xinyu Zhongtong's Annam Protectorate and has ordered you to quickly lead the army over. At this moment, the galloping of hooves came from up ahead. Go. Hurry. Fenjie and Jiao Saizang grimaced as they waved their hands and led the army forward. As the sky darkened, the rain continued to pour down, making it harder and harder to see. The war horses clattered against the ground. The 20,000-strong army did not have any distractions as they hastened forward. Whether it was Fenjie or Jiao Saizang, neither of them noticed that the surrounding atmosphere had become rather strange. Of the 10 scouts that had been sent out, at least 8 had not returned. But they were in no mood to worry about such things. Kyle. Just as the army passed through a dense hilly area, suddenly, a burst of battle cries came from the gray rain. Before anyone could react, one thick ballista bolt after another whistled through the air. The Uzun cavalry of Ney didn't even have time to dodge before they were shot down along with their horses. Not good. All soldiers on guard. Enemy attack. The Uzun guard's warning resounded through the heavens. Everything happened so suddenly that all the horses were startled and stood up one after another. But before they could react, a familiar voice rang out in their ears. Fenjie, Jiao Sero, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Do you really think you can escape? Hand over your lives. Rumble. Countless Tang soldiers charged out from their hiding places. Damn it, it's that brat. Jiao Sero and Fenjie both paled at this voice. Although they still didn't know where that mysterious youth had come from, they could never forget that unique voice. What's going on here? How did he know we were here? Jiasiluo's shock was no small matter. In their battle with Wang Chong's forces, they had been pursued far away and had expended a great deal of effort to successfully retreat. Afterwards, they had made a long detour through the rain, almost a large circle. They had believed that they had escaped from Wang Chong's forces, but they had not expected to run into them again after making such a big circle. 70,000, 80,000 soldiers had been killed until only 20,000 some remained. This army was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow, its morale at an all-time low. Even Fenjie and Jiao Sero were not willing to run into Wang Chong's forces at this time. Retreat! Panicked shouts resounded through the sky. Fenjie and Jiao Sero were pale, their faces devoid of any will to fight. They hurriedly urged their horses to gallop back in the direction the army had come from. Fenjie's forces had reacted very quickly, but Wang Chong had carefully prepared this ambush and chosen to attack when they were halfway through. How could he let them retreat so easily? You barbarians, hand over your lives. Horse hooves hurriedly galloped through the rain. A force of 4 to 5,000 cavalry galloped forward, leaving a trail of dust in their wake. Careful of the enemy! The Tibetan horsemen began to yell and shout. Boom! Before many people could react, the Tang cavalry had already crashed into the Tibetan ranks like a thunderbolt. Translated by Hypersheep 325, damn it. Stop them. They don't have many people. Don't be afraid. Kill them. 4 to 5,000 soldiers dare to charge at us? Don't be afraid. Kill them all. The ferocity and bravery of the Uzun people were carved into their bones. 4 to 5,000 soldiers dared to charge at more than 20,000 Uzun elites. The Uzun cavalry were all infuriated by this sight. Clang clang clang. At the rear of the army, the fleeing Uzun soldiers suddenly turned around and engaged in fierce combat with the Tang dynasty cavalry. In just a moment, the two armies clashed with each other and mixed together. The neighing of horses, the clanging of fighting, and the clanging of metal mixed together. It was too late for anyone to stop them. Damn it! Retreat! Quickly retreat! Everyone hear my order. Don't get tangled up with them. This Tang army's goal is to hold us down. Fenjie anxiously yelled. How could 4 to 5,000 Tang soldiers defeat more than 20,000 heavily armored Uzun cavalry? Thus, the goal of this force of cavalry had never been to kill them, but to hold them down. Infantry were far slower than cavalry. In normal circumstances, even if there was an ambush, they would still be able to escape unscathed. But now, it was all too late. This brat is too cunning. Fenjie silently cursed. Kaio! Kill. The situation was developing exactly as Fenjie had predicted. Just when several thousand Uzun cavalry were about to turn and engage the Tang people, countless Tang dynasty infantry surged out from behind the hills. Before they had even arrived, all kinds of flying axes, spears, and master archers had already begun firing. Twish twish twish. With a shrill whistle, one Uzun soldier after another fell to the ground. The Annam Protectorate attacked in wave after wave. The 4,000 cavalry took the vanguard, the master archers in the second wave, and the axemen, spearmen, and shieldmen in the third wave. The attack came in wave after wave, as smooth as flowing water, without the slightest delay. The might displayed by the 40,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers in Wang Chong's hands was completely different from before. Chapter 538. Damn it! Jiao Sero's eyes went red at this sight. As expected, anyone who had turned around to fight with the Tang soldiers was doomed. Fenjie, lead the army in a quick retreat. I'll hold off the rear. Hurry! With a roar, Jiao Sero's body began to exude a milky white light as it rapidly swelled in size. In just a few moments, it had transformed into a massive white tiger that lunged behind it. There's no need to worry about Jiao Sero. If he dares to attack us, we'll deal with the Uzun cavalry behind him. In the pouring rain, Wang Chong's eyes were like torches as he sat on the back of the white-hoofed shadow, his gaze locked onto the distant Jiao Sero. The current Jiao Sero and Fenjie were no longer as much of a threat as before, and the 20,000-some soldiers were of no threat to Wang Chong. If this guy is still here, then let him die here. The figure of the distant Jiao Sero was reflected in Wang Chong's eyes, and a thick killing intent flitted across his brow. That was then and this was now. If Jiao Sero still dared to act so impudently, the combined strength of his father, Chen Shu's son, the Eagle, Su Shiping, Su Anduin, and the other generals of the southwest would probably be enough to send Jiao Sero to his death. Wang Chong actually hoped that Jiao Sero would stay and engage in a slaughter. It would be best if he could charge into the army or directly at Wang Chong to decapitate him. Alas, Jiao Sero still had a little rationality left. After pushing back the pursuit of 10-some Tang soldiers and putting some distance between the two armies, Jiasiluo immediately turned and ran, not daring to delay for even a moment. Consider yourself lucky to run fast. Wang Chong coldly sneered, but he did not pursue. As long as an expert like Jiao Sero didn't make any mistakes and was determined to escape, even Wang Chong couldn't do anything to him. All troops, heed my command. Ignore them and attack with all your might. Finish this battle quickly and eliminate those Uzun people. We don't have much time. Wang Chong said in a deep voice. This battle could be said to be the easiest one they had ever fought. Using 40 to 50,000 soldiers to deal with a few thousand Uzun troops, it was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In just a few moments, all the Uzun who had disobeyed orders and had stayed behind to deal with the Tang out of anger had been cut down from their horses. As for the fleeing Fenjie and Jiao Saro, whether they stayed or left, Wang Chong had already achieved his goal, so they were no longer important. There's not much time left. Pack your things and leave quickly. We need to move on to the next location. Wang Chong sat on his horse and looked down from above as he ordered everyone. A group of Tang Dynasty cavalry immediately dismounted, bent down, and began to sweep the battlefield with practiced movements. Everything and everyone went about their duties, everything carried out in an orderly fashion under Wang Chong's arrangements. In just a few moments, the battlefield had been swept clean. Wang Chong's troops swiftly departed, so fast that it seemed like this battle had never even taken place. Reporting. A scout from the front has reported that the Tang dynasty has been discovered. A large group of Tang people is suspected to be approaching. Reporting. Fenjie and General Jiao Saro have sent a distress message. They've been attacked by the Tang army. In a few short moments, 2 scouts came galloping from 2 different directions to appear in front of Huoshu Wuzong. What? Even though Huoshu Wuzong had the cultivation of a great general, he couldn't help but raise his brow in shock upon receiving these 2 clearly conflicting reports. What's going on with being attacked by the Tang army? Don't they have 70 to 80,000 soldiers? And they're all cavalry, so how could they have been attacked? What sort of thing in the southwest can attack 70 to 80,000 cavalry on the plains? Milord, forgive me. This subordinate also does not know, but Fenjie and General Jiao Saro truly have been attacked. The Uzun messenger tensed up and hurriedly kneeled down. Milord, should we send someone to take a look or send reinforcements? Fenjie and Jiao Saro said that they were pursuing the Annan Protectorate, but this time, they appeared in the southwest. This is a completely different direction from the north. If nothing had happened, they would never have appeared in that direction. A rough, wild, and magnetic voice came from the side. Next to Huoshu Huizong, a muscular man wearing a bull-horned helmet and looking like a giant python with his bulging muscles spoke up. His eyes were sharp and his temples bulged. His body exuded a majestic aura that was even more powerful than Jiao Saro's. The only one who could accompany Huoshu Wuzong so closely was the leader of the 5 tiger generals, Longkinba. It was rumored that Longkinba was an orphan of the plateau who had been born by sensing draconic qi. But because of his strange birth, he was different from other infants and was abandoned on the Great Snow Mountain Holy Land. Later on, he was adopted by a senior monk of the Great Snow Mountain Temple and raised. Longkinba had studied the profound martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Of the 5 tiger generals, Longkinba was probably the one who had learned the most and the most profound martial arts of the Great Snow Mountain Temple. Boom! Splitting up was a major taboo, and before Huoshu Huizong's side could make a decision, a massive boom came from the southeast of the mountain, accompanied by a cacophony of fighting and the clashing of swords and sabers. To everyone's surprise, both Huoshu Huizong and Longkinba raised their heads and looked over. That place had no contact with the Annan Protectorate. Logically speaking, nothing should have happened there. Reporting. The report from the southeast came much faster than expected. In just a few moments, a slightly plump Uzun man immediately galloped over. Landing on the ground, he hurriedly bowed. Milord, there's news from the front. We've been attacked by a large group of Tang people. What? Huoshu Wuzong's expression sank, his complexion instantly turning nasty. Another Tang army had appeared, Fenjie's and Jiasiluo's armies had been attacked, and now even the 100,000 soldiers under his command had been attacked. The torrential rain poured down, and for a few moments, Huoshu Huizong had no idea how many enemies had come. There are so many soldiers there. How could they have been attacked by the Tang people? Longkinba, immediately go and investigate. Yes, milord. Longkinba fiercely replied, leaping onto a large horse and galloping away. To the southeast, a few moments ago, rumble. A bolt of lightning flashed through the thunderclouds, its dazzling light bathing the earth in silver. In the silver light, one could clearly see a large group of Uzun cavalry lined up at the base of the mountain, prepared to charge to the summit. The air was somber and somber. The earth rumbled, and at this moment, a dense rumbling could be heard from the distance. Through the curtain of rain and the weak light, one could faintly make out countless black silhouettes on large horses galloping in their direction. Who goes there? One of the commanding officers on the battlefield was alerted. He immediately turned his head and shouted into the distance. We're on the same side. It was Crown Prince Fenjie and General Jiao Sero who sent us. After a few moments, a soft and somewhat indistinct voice came from the distance in Uzun. Hearing the familiar voice, the commander who was holding the line on the battlefield clearly lowered his vigilance. The people of the Tang dynasty held the Uzun in extreme contempt and almost didn't speak the Uzun language. This much was certain. Crown Prince Fenjie? Weren't they sent by the great general to pursue the other Annam protectorate? The commander said, inwardly flabbergasted. Those people are too powerful. We've come under the orders of the two lords to call for reinforcements. The man lowered his voice intermittent, and his words were intermittent. Drip, drip, drip. The commander wanted to say something else, but those people had already passed through the curtain of rain. In the rain, the Uzun armor on their bodies could be clearly seen. It really is one of our own. It seems that I've been overthinking things and being too vigilant. The commander breathed a long sigh of relief and let down his guard. But a moment later, just when he let down his guard and was at his most defenseless, there was a flash of cold light. The tip of a sharp spear rapidly expanded in front of his eyes. It was just one spear. Squelch. The spear pierced through his neck and protruded out the back, bringing with it a spray of blood. Such a fast spear. As this thought flashed through the commander's mind, his vision went black, and then he knew nothing else. Attack! A furious roar pierced through the dark clouds. Wang Chong raised his spear and tossed the corpse of the Uzun commander into the distance, instantly giving the order to attack. Kill! The next moment, more than 4,000 Uzun people roared and suddenly launched an attack, pouncing on the surrounding Uzun people. Squelch! 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 The sound of sharp blades piercing through flesh came from all around. Many people were pierced by the spear before they could even react, falling off their horses. Damn it, the Tang people! They're not our people at all. Watch out! Kill them! The group of Uzun people was shocked and angry. They shouted and charged at the Uzun army that appeared later. But for those who missed the scene of Wang Chong's attack, they could not tell what was going on at all. What's going on? Why are our people fighting each other? What's going on? They're not our people. Are they the Tang people? Which one is the Tang people? Amidst the screams, the army instantly panicked. The focus of the army was on Xinyu Zhongtong and the Annan generals on the mountain. Except for a few people, no one knew what was going on. It would be fine if it was a normal battlefield, but the gray rainstorm affected many people's vision. Except for the people nearby, most of the Uzun soldiers in the distance could only see two groups of people killing each other. They could not tell who was who. Don't stop. Disperse them. Wang Chong ordered again. There were far more Uzun people around than the Tang army, but as long as they did not stop and stay in one place, it was impossible for the Uzun people to distinguish the Uzun people from the Central Plains. This result was precisely caused by Wang Chong. Clang, clang, clang. Chapter 539. There was a clear difference in height between the Central Plainsmen and the Uzun, so it was not easy to confuse them. However, Wang Chong had long given the order for everyone to lie low on the backs of their horses. Because of this, the Uzun could not tell the difference between the Central Plainsmen and the Uzun at first glance. Damn it! Damn it! Where is the enemy? Before he could finish speaking, the Uzun man was pierced by a spear. His body trembled a few times and he fell from his horse. 4,000 men had killed more than 2,000 Uzun men, and thrown the army of more than 20,000 into chaos. If it were not for the fact that Wang Chong's goal was not just to kill the enemy, this number would have been much higher. Go! Wang Chong did not continue fighting. His 4,000 men had almost drilled through the Uzun army in the southeast. Then he reined in his horse and galloped away. "Don't continue fighting. Everyone follow me." Mud splashed high into the air in the rain. The warhorses galloped away quickly. Before anyone could react, they had already galloped away. After them. When the Uzun saw this, they were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. The Uzun army of more than 100,000 men was actually ignored by 4,000 men. When had the fierce Uzun ever been humiliated like this? "Follow me. Kill them." In the rain, an Uzun general's eyes turned red. He swung the Uzun machete in his hand, pulled the reins, and shot into the rain like a bolt of lightning. Behind him, a group of enraged Uzun cavalry roared and charged out. The two armies, one in front and one behind, quickly disappeared into the rain. "Hurry!" In the gray curtain of rain, Wang Chong spurred his horse forward, urging the army. Curses could be heard from behind him, and Wang Chong could sense that there were at least thousands of Uzun men rushing towards him. "Sir, they've taken the bait." The familiar voice of the eagle came from beside him. He was also riding on a highland steed, galloping wildly. With the eagle's physique, the Uzun's armor was obviously not suitable for him. Wang Chong had to kill a tall Uzun general in order to barely make a set of armor. "Can you tell how many people there are?" Wang Chong asked. The eagle did not speak. He looked up at the sky. The bean-sized raindrops splashed on his face, but the eagle's eyes were fixed on the giant eagle circling above his head. "About 6,000 or 7,000. The eagle pondered for a moment before replying. Beasts did not have the intelligence to count people one by one. But the eagle had already trained this giant eagle through various methods to determine the number of people, and used flying diagrams to represent the number. It seems these Uzun people don't really think highly of us." Wang Chong sneered. Although they managed to kill almost half of the Uzun's men in a single charge, the Uzun people obviously did not think that it was because of their own combat strength, but because of the surprise attack. "That's right, sir." The eagle's eyes were still staring at the sky, but this time, it was not the giant eagle he raised, but a green sea eagle that had appeared out of nowhere. This green sea eagle was originally an Uzun ferocious bird, used to control the sky. The eagle had tamed it and used it for other purposes. When it came to training eagles, the Uzun people were still at the elementary level, so they were far behind the eagles. Although they didn't have much time, the eagle couldn't train the Uzun's eagle to the level of his giant eagle. However, it wasn't a problem to teach it some simple questions. "Huoshu Wuzong's side has moved out." Although I can't tell if Huoshu Wuzong's side has moved out or not, I'm sure there's a commotion there. The eagle's voice was so solemn. The biggest advantage of using the temporary training of the green sea eagle was that it could deceive the Uzun's people, making them relax their vigilance, making them unable to distinguish whether it was their own people or the others. In fact, it was theirs anyway. It's such a big commotion. It would be strange if Huoshu Wuzong didn't have any reaction. However, Xinyu Zhongtong and the other people of the Annam Protectorate are holding them back on the summit. He can't possibly have the time to deal with us. There's an 80 to 90% chance that he's sent out the other 5 tiger generals. There's no need to go there for now. Wang Chong's eyes flashed. Although he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he had a pretty good idea of what was going on in the Uzun army. There's no need to care about them. Let's go and take those fellows behind us to our destination. After saying this, Wang Chong's legs tightened as he charged forward. Rumble! Don't let them get away. The warhorses rumbled. Tens of thousands of enraged Uzun soldiers turned into a black flood of steel as they charged forward, their speed reaching the limit. 1,000 zhang. 500 zhang. 300 zhang. 100 zhang. As they got closer and closer, the soldiers stared at the Tang army in front of them. No one noticed that more and more hills were appearing around them, and that they were getting farther and farther away from the army behind them. Boom! Just when they were less than 60 zhang away, something strange happened. Just a few feet away from them, in a dark area that everyone mistook for mud, the sound of splashing water could be heard. An axeman roared as he suddenly leapt out of the ground. Clang! A cold light flashed, and with just a swing of the axe, a huge horse's head was chopped off from its neck. Nay! The warhorses neighed in fear. The sudden change had thrown the Uzun cavalry into a panic. With the warhorses killed, the Uzun cavalry were thrown far away, crashing into the ground and stirring up large amounts of mud. Splush. In the darkness, spearmen, axemen, and shield-bearers leapt out one after another from the originally ordinary hilly terrain. They stabbed with their spears, hacked with their axes, and slammed with their shields. Even more people leapt out, pouncing straight at the cavalry on horseback. At such a close distance, not even the Uzun could dodge in time. Bang bang bang. One Uzun soldier after another was thrown off their horses. In the gloom, tens of thousands of Tang Dynasty soldiers leaped out from the sides. Careful! There's an ambush! We've been fooled! Screams in Uzun language echoed through the air, faces contorted in fear. They had been so focused on exterminating the 4,000 to 5,000 Tang soldiers that they had never imagined that so many Tang Dynasty infantry would be lying in ambush at such a close distance. The Annam Protectorate. It's the other Annam Protectorate. Panicked and fearful cries resounded through the air as someone finally reacted. It was no secret that the two armies of the Annam Protectorate had been separated in the rain. Fenjie and Jiao Sero had gone to pursue them, and the messenger had long ago sent the news. Logically speaking, the other army of the Annam Protectorate should have traveled very far through the storm. No one had expected them to appear here at a time like this. The morale of the 6,000 to 7,000 Uzun soldiers had completely crumbled. Many people wanted to run, but it was too late. In the neigh, the earth rumbled and warhorses neighed. Wang Chong had already led the more than 4,000 Annam Protectorate cavalry in a counterattack. Swoosh! Wherever the spear passed, men and horses would be thrown off their feet. In this battle, Wang Chong was no longer watching from the sidelines, but personally participating in the battle. As Uzun soldier fell, pure blood energy flowed into Wang Chong's body. In this torrential rain, Wang Chong's stellar energy not only did not decrease, it only grew stronger. Leaping dragon spear. He was like a flood dragon soaring into the night sky, splashing through the torrential rain. Then, with a roll, he moved as fast as a bolt of lightning and thrust his spear into the body of a Tibetan officer 20 zhang away, caught off guard. With Wang Chong's Tier 9 true martial realm strength and the leaping dragon spear, no martial artist under the profound martial realm was a match for him. This Uzun commander's body swayed for a moment before he collapsed from his horse, his eyes wide open. In a proper battle, he would not be defeated so easily. But in a crowded and cruel battlefield, the strength of an individual was greatly reduced. With a single spear strike, he was knocked off his horse by Wang Chong. Congratulations, host. For killing 5 foreign generals, you have unlocked the general halo. You are the enemy of all generals. Regardless of whether they are from the Central Plains or the foreign countries, as long as they are your enemies, they will be weakened by the halo. Scope of effect, all generals. This halo is the upgraded version of the halo, breaking the restriction that the Bane of the Battlefield halo can only be used on soldiers below the rank of general. Attention! Host has only unlocked the general halo. To officially unlock the halo, you will need to complete the next mission. All of a sudden, a series of voices poured down from Wang Chong's mind like a waterfall. Like a bolt of lightning, Wang Chong was just about to knock over an Uzun cavalry when he sensed this change and was stunned. General halo? What's going on? Could it be that the Bane of the Battlefield halo is not a general halo? Wang Chong grasped the spear in his hand and maintained his thrusting motion. For a moment, he was stunned. The might of the halo was completely overwhelming on the battlefield. Wang Chong had always thought that this was the strength of a general. But now it seemed that this was not the case. The Stone of Destiny, what's with the general halo? Chapter 540. The Martial General Halo, as its name suggests, is only targeted at Martial General level experts. It can be superimposed with the Bane of the Battlefield halo. The Stone of Destiny's voice resounded in his mind. Does the martial general halo have any other halos besides the 10,000 generals halo? Or does the martial general halo refer to the 10,000 generals halo? Wang Chong frowned as he spoke. The martial general halo isn't just the 10,000 generals halo. There are other types that are specifically targeted. There are other types of halo, such as the Arabian halo or the Karax Spaz Inu halo, but the user has to obtain them himself. The voice added. The Arabian halo. Wang Chong's brow twitched at this name, countless thoughts flitting through his mind. Wang Chong felt like he had grasped something, but when he thought about it carefully, he realized that he had grasped nothing at all. May I ask how one can officially activate the Bane of General's halo? Wang Chong sternly asked. The power of the Bane of the battlefield was immense, and it was practically a heaven-defying existence on the battlefield. However, its flaws were also very obvious. That was, it couldn't be used against generals. Thus, whether it was Bashishing, Batunlu, Fenjie, or any other top-class expert, Wang Chong's halo was completely useless against them. But if it was the Bane of General's halo, then everything would be different. Although the Trial of Destiny had temporarily stopped Wang Chong from obtaining Destiny Energy and any other methods of obtaining strength from Destiny Energy, his other methods were still unaffected. If he could activate the Martial General Halo, it would be of enormous assistance to this battle. The requirements for the Bane of General's Halo are, first, to kill 10 foreign generals. Second, to kill a profound martial realm expert in battle. Third, to reach the third level of the Bane of the Battlefield Halo. Only when all three of these conditions are fulfilled can the Bane of General's Halo be officially activated. Buzz! Wang Chong's heart sank at these three conditions. The first condition was a little better, but neither of the other two were easy. The upgrade of the Bane of the Battlefield Halo was exponential. In the last battle, Wang Chong had commanded the Annam Protectorate to defeat the 50,000-strong army commanded by Fenjie and Jiao Sero. However, Wang Chong's Bane of the Battlefield had yet to reach the third level. Wang Chong felt that he was not far from advancing to level 3. However, as for how far away he was, even Wang Chong had no idea. Even so, he still needed to kill a profound realm expert. The Stone of Fate's condition clearly stated that it had to be done in battle. In other words, the condition required Wang Chong to kill a profound realm expert by himself. It was not that Wang Chong had never killed a profound martial realm expert before, but most of the time, Wang Chong had used the little yin-yang sword to absorb the last bit of stellar energy in the opponent's body when the opponent had lost the ability to resist. This condition was clearly different from the one mentioned in the Stone of Fate. There's plenty of time in the future. If I use this battle well, I can definitely achieve the condition to activate the General Halo. Wang Chong quickly calmed down. The Stone of Fate's condition was absolutely impossible to achieve under normal circumstances. However, in this large-scale battle that involved 3 great empires, anything was possible. If he succeeded, the General Halo might become the key to changing the course of this battle. Get ready and leave quickly. Uzun might sense something amiss at any moment. We need to move on to the next battle as soon as possible. Wang Chong came to his senses and waved his hand. In the torrential rain, the fighting had already become sporadic. For this ambush against Wang Chong, he had prepared at least 20,000 men. With 20,000 Annam Protectorate elites and 4,000 to 5,000 cavalry, dealing with 6,000 Uzun cavalry was truly too easy. The battle ended much faster than expected. Under Wang Chong's command, thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers quickly stripped the Uzun cavalry of their armor. The Highland steeds were excellent war horses and could be used by other infantrymen. With the Uzun armor and Highland steeds, Wang Chong's Uzun cavalry quickly increased from 4,000 to 8,000. Enough! Wang Chong looked at these Uzun people, who were full of vigor but obviously did not look like Highlanders. He nodded to himself. The art of war emphasized timing, geography, and people. Under normal circumstances, Wang Chong's tactics would be difficult to execute, but this torrential rain made everything possible. As long as they lowered their bodies while riding, it would be a perfect disguise. The biggest flaw was the language. If they did not know the Uzun language, they would be easily seen through. Fortunately, Wang Chong could solve this problem himself. It was impossible to master the Uzun language in a short period of time. However, he could pick a few clever ones and teach them a few simple sentences. It would be easy for them to deal with the Uzun language when they were being interrogated. Time is of the essence. Let's go. Wang Chong picked a few clever leaders and divided them into two groups. Then they quickly set off. Rumble. Amidst the dense sounds of hooves, the Annam Protectorate quickly split into two groups. One of the two groups headed south, while the other headed north. In just a short while, they disappeared into the rain. The whole process was as smooth as flowing water. It was as if they had never appeared. Dee-da-da. In the torrential rain, the sound of hooves could be heard. Shadows were approaching from afar. Who's there? At the foot of the mountain, an Uzun corporal quickly left the group. He turned around and rode his horse forward, shouting, "It's us." Those Tang people didn't catch up. They ran too fast. Damn it. The leading Uzun general said. He hammered the air with a look of resentment and helplessness. They ran away? The Uzun corporal furrowed his brows. He seemed to be a little unwilling to admit defeat. But isn't your base over there? Why did you run over here? Wrong? The leading Uzun general seemed to be taken aback. Only then did he realize that he was lost on his way back. He lowered his head and mumbled something. What did you say? The Uzun corporal walked over and asked. I said, Gula. The Uzun general's voice was a little unclear. What did you say? I said, we. The sound of the wind and rain was too loud. The Uzun general's voice was getting more and more indistinct. The Tibetan commander's brow furrowed into a deep crease. Without another word, he urged his horse forward to meet the enemy. At this moment, no one noticed that the Uzun general sneered in his heart. A mocking smile flashed across his eyes. His knowledge of the Uzun language was limited. He only knew what Wang Chong taught him. Of course, he could only mumble the rest. However, it was enough to close the distance. Brothers, charge! With a loud shout, the Uzun general finally stopped pretending. He raised his right hand above his head, and with a roar, he gave the order to attack. Rumble! The earth shook. Upon hearing the order, the morale of the Uzun army was low. All of a sudden, they raised their heads, and an astonishing aura exploded from their bodies. Kill! The warhorses galloped, and the rain splashed. Thousands of Annam Protectorate soldiers instantly launched an attack on the unprepared Uzun army. At the same time, somewhere else. Who is it? We're here to support the northwest under the general's order. Under the thunderclouds, an Uzun man rode a tall horse and raised a flagpole high. He led thousands of cavalrymen through the rain. Boom! The next moment, under the shocked gazes of countless people, the thousands of cavalrymen charged into the army, southeast, southwest, northeast. Almost all of these places were attacked by their own people. These people came and went like ghosts, and all of them were wearing Uzun armor. It was impossible to tell whether they were from the Tang dynasty or from the Uzun. Moreover, these people appeared for all kinds of strange reasons when they were in disguise, making it impossible to guard against them. At the same time, their fighting style was also fast. Most of the time, before people from other places could arrive, they had already retreated. In the extreme chaos, there were even cases of Uzun people attacking Uzun people. The most direct result of the continuous chaos was that the people were panicking. They were like birds startled by the mere twang of a bow, causing the military order to be ineffective. This was because no one knew whether the people who passed the military order were from their own people or the Tang people. Damn it! How many Tang people are here? How can we defend against them? They're even wearing our armor. We can't see them at all in the heavy rain. Moreover, it's getting darker. It's even harder to tell them apart. The Tibetan officers clenched their fists, their minds filled with irritation. If it was any other time, the Annam Protectorate would be courting death if they dared to do this. But now, the operation to encircle Xinyu Zhongtong's troops on the mountaintop was underway. Now that they were being attacked from both front and back, it was impossible for them to split their forces to search for the enemy. Moreover, There was an objective fact that could not be ignored. Although it was still dawn when the army set out, the pursuit, loss, and entanglement of the army had caused it to be almost evening by now. Even if the thunderclouds in the sky had dispersed, this was not a good time to search. More importantly, even though there had been so many Tang army raids, the Uzun people could not tell how many people had come. At the beginning, the Uzun people had thought that there was only one group. Although they were being attacked from all directions, they thought that the enemy was just deliberately mystifying things. But later on, this was not the case at all. Because at most, at least 3 directions were being attacked on a large scale at the same time. Moreover, these people would come and go as they pleased. Now, even the fierce generals of the Uzun and Gari royal lineage could not tell how many people the enemy had hidden in the darkness, let alone the soldiers at the bottom. Just what are these Uzun people doing? At the same time, on the summit of the mountain, a fully armed southwestern general with a knife scar on his left eyebrow and an aura as heavy as a mountain stood on his 2 legs and looked down at the mountain, his brows deeply furrowed. Are they deliberately mystifying things to lure us in? A tall and thin southwestern general said. His armor was stained with blood and covered in knife scars. It was clear that he had experienced countless fierce battles. In the southwest, these old generals were all fierce and valiant generals. The southwestern general with the knife scar on his left eyebrow shook his head and said meaningfully. Chapter 541. But right now, who in the southwest will help us? Could it be the Wang clan father and son? But haven't they already fled far away? Will they come back to help us now? The tall and thin general's brow grew even more confused, and he subconsciously turned to Protector General Xinyu Zhongtong. Xinyu Zhongtong had been personally chosen by the previous Protector General, Zhangqiu Jianxiong. If not for this incident, even if his seniority wasn't enough to convince the masses, even if they had any objections, no one would have dared to say anything for the sake of Zhangqiu Jianxiong. But now, everyone knew that the Annam Protectorate was at odds with itself on the outside, and that it was fraught with internal crisis. Otherwise, a significant number of Annam Protectorate soldiers wouldn't have left with the Wang clan father and son. But even so, there were still many supporters of Xinyu Zhongtong in the Protectorate who were willing to follow Zhangqiu Jianxiong's arrangements. Victory and defeat are commonplace in a soldier, and losing a battle was not the fault of a soldier. In the view of some generals, the 300,000 Mengshi soldiers, including even the Uzun soldiers, were not something that the Annam Protectorate could deal with. The Mengshi Yusang army had never appeared in the southwest before. Not even Protector General Zhangqiu Jianxiong would be able to do anything about it. I don't know. Xinyu Zhongtong looked down the mountain in silence for a long time. He truly did have complex feelings for the Wang clan father and son, but they were far from hate. On the contrary, he felt a few emotions. If not for that youngest son of the Wang clan establishing Lion City, if not for the timely arrival of the Wang clan father and son to boost morale, the Southwest Army would have been completely wiped out. Xinyu Zhongtong had always understood that his talent and knowledge of the art of war were more than enough to be a general, but he was far from being an influential protector general whose words could shake the world. But all of this was Lord Zhangqiu Jianxiong's will, and even Xinyu Zhongtong could only submit. But no matter what, the Annan Protectorate Army had been reduced to its current state, and he had to take responsibility for it. Even though I don't know what's going on, there's one thing I can be sure of. The person leading the troops down the mountain is definitely not the Wang father and son. Xinyu Zhongtong took a deep breath and quickly came back to his senses. Although the generals were not convinced by him on the surface, as the commander-in-chief of the army, his top priority was to find a way to lead them out of the predicament they were in. Wang Yan's style is upright and strict. With his personality, it's impossible for him to use such a sneak attack. As for Wang Fu, although his resourcefulness far surpasses his father's, and I'm not his match, I'm afraid, he still can't do all of this. After following the Lord Protector General for so many years, Xinyu Zhongtong's strength might not have reached that level, but his vision was still there. But, if it's not the Wang father and son, who else could it be? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow couldn't help but ask in surprise. Of all the outstanding generals in the southwest, only the Wang father and son could reach Xinyu Zhongtong's level in the art of war and strategy. But if even they weren't the Wang father and son, then who was commanding the army to attack Uzun's men? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow was momentarily stunned. This answer had truly surpassed his expectations. Could it be that some other formidable character has appeared in the southwest? Could it be Li Zhengyi? But didn't he die in battle a long time ago? The southwestern general with the scar on his left eyebrow was in turmoil. There's no need to think too much about it. No matter what his background is, there's one thing we can be sure of: he's a friend, not a foe. Pass on my order. Do everything in your power to hold them down. A sharp light flashed in Xinyu Zhongtong's eyes as he raised his right arm and immediately issued the order. And with Xinyu Zhongtong's order, the entire army rumbled to life. Although aggressive assaults in the open were not Xinyu Zhongtong's forte, in terms of infantry defense, Xinyu Zhongtong was an absolute valiant general. Thus, even though he was facing an enemy that was twice his size, Huoshu Wuzong was still unable to easily defeat his troops. Kaio! The heaven-shaking war drums and shouts resounded through the clouds as the army once more plunged into a fierce battle. "My lord, the southwest is under attack again. They're pretending to be our men. We've suffered heavy losses. If this continues, we'll collapse on our own. My lord, the southeast is also under attack." At the base of the mountain, Huoshu Wuzong was seated atop a highland steed that was taller than a man. Around him, one herald after another came out one after another. At first, Huoshu Wuzong didn't care about this itch. If a war could be won by such a chaotic method, then there would be no need to fight it. Everyone could just use such a method. To Huoshu Wuzong, who had an army of 100,000 and commanded more than 200,000 elites from the Ngari royal lineage, the enemy's method was just child's play. To be more precise, they were digging their own graves. But what happened next was completely wrong. Southeast, southwest, northwest. Every direction was under attack, and the army's rhythm of attack was completely disrupted. At the base of the mountain, the army in all four directions was in chaos. They couldn't even command them to attack. Even someone of Huoshu Huizong's worldview found it inconceivable that a force of only a few thousand could cause such a disturbance to his army of 100,000. Since when did such a powerful figure appear in the Annam Protectorate? Huoshu Huizong's eyes glowed with a cold light that seemed almost tangible. From the start of this assault until now, Huoshu Wuzong had finally realized that he had made a mistake. The enemy commander had displayed superb mastery of the art of war, an ability that no general could compare to. To be more precise, Huoshu Wuzong had never seen anyone capable of such a level of harassment. "My lord, what do we do? Should your subordinates send a group of soldiers to deal with them?" A familiar voice rang out in Longkinba's ear. As he listened to the chaos coming from all around him, he was infuriated by these assaults. This sort of harassment wasn't anything formidable. Logically speaking, if he caught them once, they would all be wiped out. But for some reason, he hadn't been able to catch them even once. He had even changed his position several times, but he still hadn't been able to catch a single one of them. Longkinba couldn't even tell if his luck was terrible to the extreme or if there was some other reason. "There's no need." Huoshu Wuzong waved his hand. "A large-scale mobilization won't be able to hide from the enemy's eyes and ears, and it will also scatter our forces. Most importantly, you've already been targeted. It's useless no matter where you go." With these last words, Huoshu Huizong looked at his trusted general with a profound look in his eyes. The agitated Longkinba was instantly dumbfounded. Do you really think that it's just bad luck that you haven't been able to meet them?" Huoshu Huizong coldly snorted and indifferently said. He had never believed in coincidences. He only believed in his own eyes. Longkinba had definitely been targeted. "But how is this possible?" Longkinba said in shock. There were 100,000 Uzun warriors here, and with so many of them densely packed together, how could the enemy possibly determine his position? In truth, given the enemy's position, not even Longkinba could keep track of him at all times. In fact, this was something that was simply impossible to achieve. This answer was so shocking that it didn't even matter if Longkinba could capture the enemy and deal them a vicious blow. There's nothing in this world that's impossible. Huoshu Wuzong indifferently said, paying no attention to Longkinba. He slowly raised his chin and pretended to look up at the sky. Longkinba was left in a daze. Wait, it's not impossible. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Longkinba's mind. His entire body trembled as he followed Huoshu Wuzong's gaze and looked up at the sky. Above his head, dark clouds hung low. Bolts of lightning shuttled through the clouds, followed by a dense torrential rain, which slammed into his face one by one. But he couldn't see anything behind the dark clouds. No, there must be something. Longkinba clenched his fists, an indescribable feeling in his heart. Although he couldn't see anything, he was sure that there was something behind the dark clouds. It seems like your reaction isn't slow. Huoshu Wuzong indifferently said, his voice much calmer than before. Although he was a little slow, Longkinba had still managed to react. In this torrential rain and surrounded by an army of 100,000, it was almost impossible to accurately lock onto the movements of a single person. But just because it was impossible didn't mean it was impossible. At the very least, Longkinba had no secrets to speak of from the sky. The enemy has probably determined that I'm the commander-in-chief and have to oversee the central army. The only people I can send out are you lot. Bashishing is currently at the pass, and Jiao Sero and Mengshi Zhao are together. There are only a few people left, and you're the strongest of the 5 tiger generals. They only need to keep an eye on you. Huoshu Wuzong's eyes were like torches, as if he had long ago seen through the truth. If Wang Chong were here and heard these words, he would assuredly be stunned, because this was truly the truth. Huoshu Wuzong was said to be in existence on par with Zhangzhou Jianxiong in the southwest, and it now appeared that this was indeed the case. He could not be underestimated. Longkinba, go to the southeast again and draw them away. As for me, this farce has gone on for so long, it's time for me to go out. With a wave of his hand, Huoshu Wuzong urged his horse forward, riding off to the southwest with his several dozen personal guards. No matter who you are, as long as you want to continue this game, you'll definitely come. I'll be waiting for you. On his horse, Huoshu Wuzong's eyes were closed, his expression callous, his mind in turmoil. Although he had been overseeing the central army this entire time, he had not come away empty-handed. The attacks of the Tang people seemed chaotic and without any pattern, but Huoshu Wuzong had long ago found the tiniest clues. If his guess was right, their next attack would be in the southwest. No matter who they were, this time, he would wipe them all out. Chapter 542. Young Master, where should we attack next? In the depths of the rain and wind, Wang Chong and the Eagle had gathered together, leading several soaked armies. Wang Chong's strategy was already showing its effects. The army at the base of the mountain was in chaos, making it impossible for them to focus on attacking the Annam Protectorate. In all his years as an official, this was the first time the Eagle had fought to his heart's content. He felt like he was dancing on the edge of a blade. He was facing more than 100,000 Uzun cavalry, and the slightest mistake could result in his death. But under Wang Chong's arrangements, each attack was more daunting than dangerous. Not only was it more daunting than dangerous, it was also playing around with the Uzun army, throwing them into chaos. This was completely different from the Eagle's understanding of the cruelty and cold-bloodedness of the battlefield, where one could die at any moment. For a moment, the Eagle was forced to admit that he was a little infatuated with this feeling. We can't attack anymore. To his surprise, Wang Chong completely rejected the Eagle's idea. Don't forget that the Uzun still have Huoshu Wuzong. Part of the reason we were able to succeed so early on was because of our proper planning, but the other part was that Huoshu Wuzong underestimated us. We could forget about it before, but now that things have developed to this point, if Huoshu Wuzong still doesn't come out, then he really is a great general. The Eagle was dumbfounded. The feeling of toying with a Tibetan army of more than 100,000, of toying with a powerful foe in the palm of one's hand, was so intoxicating that it made one forget for a moment that the Tibetan army had not moved. As Uzun Great General, Huoshu Wuzong had been overseeing the center of the army and had not moved at all. A chill poured down from the top of the head, and the eagle's entire body went cold as he came to his senses. Imperial great generals played a decisive role. Their individual strength might not be enough to overturn a battle, but they were more than capable of changing the outcome. Based on everyone's current condition, it would be fine if they didn't encounter Huoshu Wuzong. But if they did encounter him, 4 to 5,000 men would be insignificant to someone of that level. At the very least, it would be a piece of cake for him to heavily injure them. Being lucky for a while doesn't mean you'll be lucky forever. After playing for so long, it's time to stop. Wang Chong glanced at the eagle and paused. And don't forget what our goal is. You are right, young master. I was careless. The eagle's entire body turned cold, and he broke out in a cold sweat. He immediately came to his senses. That's right. From the very beginning, Wang Chong had made it very clear that the purpose of this operation was to create a diversion and constantly harass the enemy. Their goal was not simply to kill the enemy. With just their army, it was impossible for them to defeat Huoshu Wuzong's army head-on. Their goal was only to restrain him. But this was not their ultimate goal. "My lord, what should we do next?" The eagle sternly said. "After harassing them for so long, it's time for us to take action. Pass on my order. Have them move out. In addition, send a message to Protector General Xianyu on the summit. Without their cooperation, we won't be able to do this." Wang Chong's gaze pierced through the air toward the distant mountain peak. The Central Plains Tang Dynasty and Uzun would have a decisive battle, but not today, not now. The urgent task at hand was to bring out Xinyu Zhongtong and the tens of thousands of Anan Protector General under his command. This was the ultimate goal of this operation. "Yes, young master," the eagle sternly said, his expression extremely respectful. After pausing for a moment, he thought of something and said, "Then, young master, I'll summon the others back." "No!" Wang Chong shook his head, his profound eyes gazing up at the thick thunderclouds, an astonishing light in them. "The operation must continue. If we don't continue, how can we succeed?" The eagle blankly stared at Wang Chong, unable to understand what he was thinking. Wang Chong had clearly rejected his suggestion, but now, he was saying that the operation must continue. This completely different decision left the eagle in a daze, unable to grasp what Wang Chong was thinking. Wang Chong sensed the eagle's thoughts, but he only smiled and did not explain. Slowly turning his head, Wang Chong peered through the darkness to the southwest of the mountain range. "Huoshu Wuzong, if I'm not mistaken, you should be there right now, right? With your intelligence, there's no way you wouldn't have noticed." But alas, a brilliant light flashed through Wang Chong's eyes, but he stopped thinking about it. In this world, Huoshu Wuzong was definitely one of the most supreme existences. Whether it was in intelligence or martial prowess, an imperial great general was not someone that ordinary generals could compare to. An ordinary opponent really wouldn't be a match for Huoshu Wuzong. Alas, Huoshu Wuzong's opponent was Wang Chong. Not even this great general of the Uzun Empire could have imagined that his opponent would be the war saint who would reign supreme over the world. "I didn't think that we would finally fight. Although, for the time being, this method," Wang Chong quietly said to himself. In his last life, one of Wang Chong's greatest regrets was that he had missed out on the peak of his era, missing out on the chance to compete with those illustrious great generals and marshals. This was an era of dazzling generals, and he, the publicly acknowledged war saint, had never been able to exchange blows with these top-class military figures. This had always been a deep regret in Wang Chong's heart. But now, this regret had finally been fulfilled. Even though the price of this clash of soldiers was the fate of the Tang Dynasty and the Uzun Empire for the next few decades, as well as the lives of the nearly 1 million civilians of the Southwest, Wang Chong could not afford to lose this war. "The eagle, come here. In a little while, follow my orders." Wang Chong came back to his senses, his eyes turning sharp. "Yes, young master." The eagle's eyes grew brighter and brighter as he listened to Wang Chong's whisper. In the end, he respectfully replied and swiftly left to carry out his orders. The night was quiet. Compared to the fierce battle at the top of the mountain, the foot of the mountain seemed even quieter. The Tang people wearing the armor of the Uzun people and riding on the highland steeds of the Uzun people had already affected the arrangement of the Uzun army, restraining a large number of troops. At the base of the mountain, everyone was on high alert, but their main task was no longer to deal with the Annam Protectorate led by Xinyu Zhongtong at the summit, but the elusive troops of the Tang people. The sky was dark, and the sky was getting darker. Southwest of the base of the mountain, a group of people looked at the dark storm in front of them and were on high alert. Rumble! Lightning flashed. Suddenly, the sound of hooves came from the opposite side. At first, it was inaudible, but it gradually became louder. Everyone's spirits immediately became tense. Who are you? Stop! Don't come any closer. An Uzun general stood in the heavy rain with both hands on his scimitar and shouted in the Uzun language. Take off your helmets and show your identity. Behind him, many Uzun cavalrymen sat on their horses. They looked into the distance and pulled out their scimitars. But that was all. No one dared to act rashly, because they had killed their own people by mistake several times before. The current situation made everyone panic. On the one hand, they were suspicious of the identity of the other side, and on the other hand, they were afraid of killing their own people by mistake. Before they confirmed the identity of the other side, all the Uzun people were in a dilemma. Dee-da-da. The sound of hooves was getting closer and closer. Finally, many ferocious black shadows appeared in the heavy rain as if they had walked out of the netherworld. Don't attack. We are on the same side. An Uzun language came from the dark night. As those people spoke, they quickly approached. Buzz! Not only did the atmosphere not relax, but it also became more and more tense. A cavalryman pressed his hands on the back of his scimitar, and blue veins bulged on his arms. Take off your helmets. Stop. Don't come any closer. Who the hell are you people? Bastard, didn't I tell you not to come any closer? That everyone became nervous. Because while they were talking, not only did the other side not stop, but they were also getting closer. We are not enemies. That person's voice came from the dark night again. He was still moving forward. Everyone be careful. There is something wrong with these guys. The atmosphere was tense, and even the slowest person could feel it. After experiencing so many things, everyone became very cautious. But no one dared to make a move because they still couldn't confirm the identity of the other side. Heavy rain poured down, and the pitter-patter covered everything. No one dared to confirm if the other side didn't hear them clearly. After all, this situation had happened before. Umph! A cold snort rang out. In the crowd, no one noticed that there was only one person who clenched his fists and looked at the approaching black shadows. He let out a cold smile of death. While everyone else was worried about the figure in front of them, he felt like he was watching a group of ants walking into a death trap. Come on! Huoshu Wuzong looked at the other side like he was looking at a group of corpses. At this moment, Huoshu Wuzong was wearing the armor of a soldier and had retracted his aura. It was impossible to tell that he was an imperial great general at all. Even if Long Qinbo were standing next to him, he probably wouldn't be able to recognize him. But even so, everyone knew that this soldier's physical strength was enough to destroy the world and inflict a heavy blow on this army. 600 zhang. 500 zhang. 400 zhang. As the distance got closer and closer, Huoshu Wuzong remained hidden in the army, unmoved, but the killing intent in his eyes grew thicker and thicker. 300 zhang. This distance was already rather dangerous. If he went any further, just a little bit more, these people would enter his attack range. As long as he was within 100 zhang, not a single one of them would be able to escape. An imperial great general was more than capable of destroying them. Buzz. The footsteps stopped abruptly. Without any warning, the army suddenly stopped in their tracks. Twang twang twang. The bowstrings vibrated, and before anyone could react, a torrential rain of arrows rained down from the opposing camp. Screams filled the air as everyone was struck dumb by this sudden turn of events. Even Huoshu Wuzong was dumbfounded. He had never imagined that these people would suddenly change tactics and use an arrow rain. But what was even more shocking was yet to come. Hong long long, the warhorses neighed. After the first wave of arrows, the strange black shadows suddenly turned around and ran away without saying anything. Before the others could react, the army had already run 5,000 zhang away. Astonishment, surprise, shock. Countless complicated expressions appeared on the faces of the soldiers, all of them dumbstruck by this sight. Kill them! Boom! Rumbling sounds could be heard as everyone stared in shock at the sudden turn of events. However, one person suddenly stood out from the crowd and shot forward like a bolt of lightning in pursuit of Meng Hao. Do you think you can escape? Chapter 543. Aya! The warhorses neighed, and countless people screamed as they were sent flying. While they were still in the air, they were torn into countless pieces by the tyrannical Gang Qi. Even the warhorses were shattered into pieces and scattered in the fierce red flames. In all directions, a torrent of energy surged in the void like a scorching sun, filling every inch of the void and burning fiercely. Huoshu Wuzong's stellar energy was so tyrannical that wherever it shrouded, a scarlet sun seemed to rise. Amidst this intense blaze, the sky seemed to be ablaze. Before the torrential rain in the clouds could even fall, it was ignited and evaporated into white smoke. Pieces of flesh and blood, ashes, accompanied by fear, spread in the void. Huoshu Wuzong's strength had already surpassed everyone's expectations. Before him, everyone felt as insignificant as an ant. The moment they sensed Huoshu Wuzong's aura that was as vast as a mountain and as vast as the sea, all of them felt a boundless fear. But it's Huoshu Wuzong. Only his stellar energy can emit this kind of flame. We're no match for him. But only General and the others can deal with him. The warhorses galloped forward. An intense fear hung over their heads like the sword of Damocles, stabbing at their hearts. Everyone's faces were ghastly white, devoid of all blood. As the mortal enemy of the Southwest, everyone knew of Huoshu Wuzong's reputation. And in this war of the Southwest, the Annam Protectorate had fought with Uzun's forces for over a month. They were all too familiar with Huoshu Wuzong's aura. The blazing red lotus karmic fire burned the heavens and the seas, incinerating all. It was a nightmare for all the people of Lion City. Even more shocking was that this operation had been meticulously planned and calculated by Wang Chong. A distance of 300 zhang should have been a safe distance. But no one had expected Huoshu Wuzong's methods to be so godly. For other experts, the distance restrictions seemed to be non-existent to him. Just like that, everyone suffered heavy injuries. The warhorses beneath their feet, the halos on their bodies, the armors on their bodies, the weapons on their bodies, and the strength they had cultivated were all insignificant to Huoshu Wuzong. In just one move, Huoshu Wuzong had destroyed the Tang army's vigorous fighting strength. Humph! Don't you think it's too late to escape now? Huoshu Wuzong looked at the fleeing Annam Protectorate and sneered in his heart. A strong murderous aura erupted from his body. As the commander-in-chief of the army, he could not be easily moved. However, since he had decided to attack, he would not give him any chance to escape. It was time to end this farce that had affected him so much. Under such circumstances, if he still let these Tang people, who had been harassing everywhere, escape, then he would really be in vain as the great general of Uzun. All troops, listen up. Kill all the Tang people. Leave no one alive. As he charged out, Huoshu Wuzong gave the order to attack. Arg! Kill them! Waves of excited roars erupted from the void behind Huoshu Wuzong like a tsunami. The momentum was so shocking that even Huoshu Wuzong could not help but raise his eyebrows. Kill them! Damn it, we finally caught them. It's really them. The great general is here, and they still dare to come. They're asking for death. Bastards! These Tang people are dead meat. The resentment and dissatisfaction that had accumulated in the hearts of the Uzun people burst out in an instant. After fighting for so long, not only did they not find any traces of the Tang people, but they were also toyed with by them. The Tang people threw them into chaos and killed their own people. This was a disgrace. Now they could finally vent their anger. Rumble! Like a river bursting its banks, All the Uzun cavalrymen roared crazily. They followed Huoshu Wuzong at a speed that they had never seen in their lives and rushed forward. 5,000 feet. 4,000 feet. 3,000 feet. The crowd chased crazily in the heavy rain. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. In front of them, the Tang people's formation was completely messed up. Maybe it was because they did not expect the great General Huoshu Wuzong to show up and were too frightened. This was a good chance. The chaos of the Tang people was undoubtedly a great chance for the Uzun people. Rumble. Like a bolt of lightning flashing across the void, the Uzun people rushed into the army of the Tang people. Bang, bang, bang. The scimitars flashed by, and the figures fell from the horses one after another like wheat being harvested. However, in the next moment, when everyone was most excited and looking forward to it, all the shouting stopped abruptly. It was as if an invisible hand had gripped everyone's necks, choking their throats. Everyone's face was filled with astonishment. Even Huoshu Wuzong was stunned. How is this possible? No one knew when the army stopped charging. A young general suddenly jumped off his horse. Looking at the dead Tang people on the ground, he was dumbfounded and couldn't even speak properly. The Tang people on the ground were dead, but not in the way that people imagined. Those dead Tang people were completely different from the Tang people's impression of them. Their faces were red, revealing a plateau red that could only be obtained from living at high altitudes and on high terrains for a long time. In fact, this was the plateau red. Damn it! They are not the Tang people at all, but our Uzun people. These Tang people used the dead of our Uzun people to pretend to be them. An Uzun general roared angrily. Those Tang people on horseback were not the Tang people at all. They were the Uzun people who had chased after Wang Chong, as well as the other Uzun people who had died in battle. This wave of attacks seemed fierce and threatening, but in reality, besides a small number of Tang people, the rest were all the corpses of the Uzun people who had died in battle. We've been tricked. At the very front of the army, Huoshu Wuzong sat on a tall horse, his eyebrows twitching. He had only expected the beginning but not the end. The enemy was far more cunning than he had imagined. Their plan of harassment was a mixture of truth and falsehood, truth and falsehood. In this wave, even he had been tricked. At this moment, Huoshu Wuzong suddenly had a very bad feeling. Boom! At this moment, an earth-shattering shout suddenly came from the northeast. Through the gray curtain of rain, the originally quiet northeast suddenly became noisy. Shouts of killing, angry roars, and the sound of weapons rang out. In the dark of night, countless people charged into the Uzun people's line of defense. Not good. Huoshu Wuzong's eyelids twitched, and he cried out inwardly. We've fallen for the Tang people's trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. Hiya! With no time to think, Huoshu Wuzong turned his horse around and suddenly shot toward the place where the battle was taking place. At this point, things had completely gone out of control. No matter how slow Huoshu Wuzong's reaction was, he knew that the enemy's harassment was only a feint. The real attack had only just begun. All of the enemy's previous attacks added up together, all for this moment. The terrain in the southwest was extremely flat, with only a few hills. It was not easy for an army to hide in such a situation. But at such a close distance, Huoshu Wuzong had not sensed them in the slightest. To be able to hide an army to this extent, the enemy's grasp of time and distance was simply exquisite, not something an ordinary famed general could compare to. To think that there would be someone of this level in the southwest, Huoshu Wuzong had to admit that he had truly underestimated them. Retreat, retreat. Stop them with everything you have. Huoshu Huaitsong anxiously shouted. But even this Yusang great general whose name resounded throughout the southwest had miscalculated at this moment. From the start, Wang Chong had come up with this plan of harassment, luring the tiger away from the mountain. He had never intended to give the enemy a chance to retreat. Hurry! Group 12 Aerial Fire. Chapter 544. Infantry, axemen, spearmen, cavalry, shield-bearers, and godly archers worked closely together under Wang Chong's command. Like moving clouds and flowing water, They advanced steadily towards the top of the mountain. Unlike the previous ambushes, Wang Chong led his army in a way that no one could have imagined. He chose to attack from the front. Wang Chong did not even think of concealing it. 40 to 50,000 soldiers broke through the gray curtain of rain and attacked in a way that no one could have imagined. And of all the Tibetan armies, the northeast corner just so happened to be their weakest point. Wang Chong's previous ambushes had allowed him to figure out the Uzun's attack patterns and their defensive arrangements. The Uzun army's strength was no secret to Wang Chong. Hurry! Time is of the essence. Huoshu Wuzong has been lured away by us. We need to break through the Uzun army's formation as quickly as possible and bring the Annam Protectorate out of here. Wang Chong said. Wang Chong's father Wang Yan, the Eagle, the veteran general Chen Shusun, and the two commandants Su Shiping and Su Anduin all gathered around Wang Chong. According to Wang Chong's will, they commanded the army to advance like a tidal wave. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing against metal rang out incessantly. Arrows, spears, sabers, and swords intertwined. In the southeast, all the Uzun soldiers were completely routed under the pincer attack of the two armies. Wang Chong's attack was extremely sharp. The army he chose to attack was precisely where the Uzun army was the thinnest. The cooperation between the different armies was impeccable. Swords could not pierce through, and water could not splash through. It far exceeded everyone's expectations. On the top of the mountain, Xinyu Zhongtong had already received Wang Chong's messenger pigeon. All of the armies hurriedly coordinated with each other and attacked from the northeast. With two pincer attacks, the situation of the battle in the northeast could be imagined. Run! How can there be so many of them? It's the Wang father and son. They've turned around. We can't stop them. What about the great general? Only the great general can deal with them. Only the great general has a way. That Uzun would never give in so easily, but the form was stronger than the person. At the same time, he was facing attacks from both Wang Chong and Xinyu Zhongtong, and Wang Chong's halo of Dusk Stallion and Bane of the Battlefield, and Uzun's men were no match at all. The collapse of the northeast side was far faster than anyone could have imagined. Wang Chong did not even give Huoshu Wuzong a chance to return to the main army before he completely pierced through the Uzun army in the northeast. Lord Wang, you really came? On the top of the mountain, everyone was drenched in the heavy rain. Xinyu Zhongtong stood on the top of the mountain, his eyes filled with desire. Seeing Wang Yan step out, he was first shocked, and then his face lit up with joy. Xinyu Zhongtong had long ago wanted to know who it was that had come to save him. But Xinyu Zhongtong had never imagined that it really would be Wang Yan, who should have disappeared by now. In the pouring rain, Xinyu Zhongtong was deeply moved that Wang Chong's forces had not abandoned them. Lord Protector General has misunderstood. I am not the one commanding the army this time. It is my unworthy son Wang Chong. Wang Yan's expression was solemn. Hearing Xinyu Zhongtong's words, he didn't say much. He only stepped to the side, revealing Wang Chong behind him. Lord Xinyu, it has been a long time. Wang Chong did not stand on ceremony. With a wave of his sleeve, he lightly stepped forward, passing by his father to appear before Xinyu Zhongtong. Chong Gongzi. Upon seeing Wang Chong, Xinyu Zhongtong's eyes widened in disbelief. Xinyu Zhongtong had met Wang Chong before, and it had been at Zhangzhou Jianxiong's banquet. Zhangzhou Jianxiong seemed to view Wang Chong in a new light, and for this reason, Xinyu Zhongtong also had a deep impression of Wang Chong. Moreover, Xinyu Zhongtong had some understanding of Wang Chong's affairs. The things he had done in the capital, including the storm he had stirred up in the royal court, were not things that an ordinary person could accomplish. Not to mention, the Holy Emperor seemed to regard this young man highly. Naturally, Xinyu Zhongtong had a deep impression of him as well. Not to mention, the Lion City, which had saved nearly 80,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate, was single-handedly constructed by Wang Chong. Due to this, Xinyu Zhongtong was filled with gratitude toward the distant Chong Gongzi in the capital, even though Wang Chong was only a teenager, and he didn't even have a title of nobility. You are welcome to follow my official WeChat account and Weibo. You can search for Huang Fuqi. There are many contents that can't be found in novels. Chong Gongzi, it's you. Xinyu Zhongtong abruptly stepped forward and grabbed Wang Chong's hands in agitation. For Wang Chong to descend from the sky at this moment was nothing short of a miracle. This was something that Xinyu Zhongtong didn't expect. Wang Chong was also taken aback. He hadn't expected Xinyu Zhongtong's attitude. After all, he was still the Protector General of the Empire, a position on par with people like Geshu Han and Zhang Shogui. Though in terms of personal prestige, he was still lacking. Lord Protector General, this isn't the time to talk about this. I've already used the tactic of luring Huoshu Huizong away. However, he might return at any moment. Time is of the essence, so we must leave as soon as possible. Wang Chong opened his palm and revealed the token that Zhangzhou Jianqiong had given him. The battlefield was ever-changing, and anything could happen. The slightest mistake could lead to the destruction of an army. Wang Chong didn't dare to make this sort of mistake. After all, no one could bear the consequences. This is the token that Lord Zhangzhou gave me. Seeing the token is the same as seeing the person. Lord Protector General, on our way here, Lord Zhangzhou said that the past is the past, and the urgent task is to preserve our strength and ensure the safety of the Annam Protectorate. As for the affairs of the Southwest, listen to my orders in the future. Milord, please cooperate. This is also Lord Zhangzhou's order. As Wang Chong spoke, he took out a white envelope. Xinyu Zhongtong was the Protector General of the Empire. Regardless of his original status, he was currently the commander of the Southwest. A single token didn't mean much. Only Zhangzhou Jianqiong's personal token and handwritten letter could be trusted. This was why Wang Chong had visited Zhangzhou Jianqiong to ask for them. Chonga! Even Wang Chong's father, Chen Shusun, and Su Shiping were shocked to see the letter and token in Wang Chong's hand. The token was secondary, but it was clear that none of them knew about the letter. Not even Wang Yan had expected that Wang Chong had come this time to take over Xinyu Zhongtong's command. Chong, what are you doing? Making trouble. Stand down. Wang Yan harshly rebuked, his face dark. But Wang Chong pretended not to hear, his eyes fixed on Xinyu Zhongtong. Rain continued to fall from the sky, but Wang Chong used stellar energy to deflect it so that none of it landed on the letter. Time was short, and the sounds of fighting could shake the heavens. They didn't have much time left. Although he had thought that Xinyu Zhongtong wouldn't disobey, he didn't have much time left. But if Xinyu Zhongtong refused to listen, there was nothing he could do. Xinyu Zhongtong couldn't hear anything. He stared at the black token in Wang Chong's hand and then at the letter. He took in a deep breath and came to his senses. He didn't even need to open the letter in Wang Chong's hand to recognize it as Zhangzhou Jianqiong's handwriting. With Zhangzhou Jianqiong's token and his handwritten letter, there was no longer any doubt as to the credibility of Wang Chong's words. Xinyu Zhongtong had never imagined that the Protector General would give the command of the army in the southwest to this teenager, and one that didn't have much to do with the Southwestern Protectorate Army. At this moment, countless thoughts flew through Xinyu Zhongtong's mind. As he stared at the familiar token and letter and recalled the strange activity at the base of the mountain, Xinyu Zhongtong seemed to understand something. There's no need. Xinyu Zhongtong pushed aside the letter in Wang Chong's hand. There were some things that didn't need to be seen. Since Lord Zhangzhou was willing to hand over his personal token to the young man before him, his intentions had been made clear. That letter was superfluous. Since Lord Zhangzhou has already given the order, we will follow young master's orders. Everyone hear my order. Assemble the army and break out. On the mountain, Xinyu Zhongtong issued the final order for this battle. Bang! The soldiers on the mountain immediately responded, their morale soaring. Let alone Wang Yan and Chen Shusun, even Wang Chong was surprised that Xinyu Zhongtong had so readily handed over command. Everyone hear my order. Break out. Elated, Wang Chong urged his horse down the mountain. At the same time, he immediately gave the order for the army to break out. Rumble. Just like that, a massive breakthrough that would decide the fate of the Empire and the Southwest began in the rainy night. I didn't think that it would be him. In the darkness, Wang Chong had no idea that a pair of eyes had been silently observing him. If he had only been guessing at the start, Then now, with Wang Chang's order, everything became clear. The person commanding the army at the base of the mountain and exhausting the Uzun army was none other than that youth galloping down the mountain. No wonder Lord Protector General gave him command of the army. Xinyu Zhongtong had long ago heard of Wang Chang's abilities. But not even Xinyu Zhongtong could have imagined that Wang Chong was also talented in the field of military affairs. Although he was a little shocked, upon further thought, Xinyu Zhongtong began to understand. For a teenager to be able to command an army that far surpassed that of a renowned general of the empire sounded inconceivable, and anyone else would find it hard to believe. But if it was Wang Chong, when he thought about the regional commander's incident and that miraculous lion city that had saved everyone's lives, Xinyu Zhongtong began to understand. I didn't think that it would be the Wang clan's father and son. Xinyu Zhongtong laughed bitterly in his heart, then quickly galloped off into the rain. Although Xinyu Zhongtong had long ago determined that the one commanding the army at the base of the mountain was not Wang Yan or Wang Fu, in the end, he had still proven that it was the Wang clan's father and son. Chapter 545. Cavalry in front, shieldmen on the outside, spearmen in the center. All soldiers advance. Master Archer Square, ready to respond at any moment. 20 paces to the left, Cavalry Square. Scatter them. 21 paces to the right, archers, concentrate your fire. Like an avalanche, the two armies merged into one, their momentum unstoppable. At the very least, in terms of numbers, the Annam Protectorate was not much inferior to the Uzun. At the very least, in the northeast, the Tang dynasty's military power completely surpassed that of the Uzun. Wang Chang's tactics had always been to anticipate the enemy's moves. Those Uzun soldiers would often be sniped and cut off by Wang Chong before they could even form up. Xinyu Zhongtong's forces didn't even encounter any decent resistance before they successfully charged from the summit to the base of the mountain. Under the charge of nearly 100,000 soldiers, the Uzun army in the northeast was completely routed. The chaos spread like a tide to every corner of the base of the mountain. Bastard! In the distance, Longkinba's eyes were red, his hair standing on end in anger. He had sensed the disturbance in the distance and had immediately urged his horse over, but even after all this time, he was still unable to get close. On the way, all kinds of routed Uzun cavalry were fleeing in panic. It wasn't much when one or two people were fleeing, but when tens of thousands of people were fleeing together, it felt like they were advancing against a raging flood. Even though Longkinba was a renowned general of the Uzun, he was helpless. He had killed 6 or 7 fleeing soldiers, but he had only been able to slightly slow the flow of the fleeing army. He had been completely unable to stop the chaos of the army, much less get close. Longkinba was so angry that his entire body was trembling. On this journey south from the Uzun Plateau, Longkinba had been practically invincible, but now, all his strength was useless. Damn the Tang people. I'd like to see if every one of your 90,000 soldiers has grown wings and can run as fast as the highland steeds on the plateau. Longkinba's heart seethed with rage as he stared at the distant army of the Tang people, his eyes almost spitting fire. Everyone, listen up. Break out of the encirclement and advance towards the north. Don't stop. Almost at the same time, Wang Chong also urgently ordered the army to rush to the northern region. Young master, actually, we don't have to be so anxious. Suddenly, a voice rang in his ears. An Annam Protectorate general in his 40s with a dark face had somehow snuck up to Wang Chong's side. He glanced at the defeated Uzun soldiers from time to time with a tempted expression. Now that our armies have gathered, our numbers are no less than Uzun's. Now that the Uzun have been defeated, the situation is advantageous to us. Perhaps, we can even turn the tables and defeat them, inflicting heavy losses on the Uzun. He hadn't originally had this idea. But as he watched the Uzun soldiers around him being routed by Wang Chong's army, all of them fleeing like wolves, he couldn't suppress this idea. If they could defeat the Uzun, if they could defeat Huoshu Wuzong, this would be an enormous victory for the Tang dynasty, one that would boost the confidence of the entire army. Are you one of Lord Xinyu's subordinates? Wang Chong was already familiar with the Annam Protectorate generals that had followed his father. Even if he had never spoken to them before, he was familiar with their faces. But this Annam Protectorate general, Wang Chong had never seen him before. The dark-faced Annam Protectorate general froze for a moment before subconsciously nodding his head. He didn't understand why Wang Chong would suddenly ask this question. Then it's no wonder. Then let me ask you, of the 4 Uzun regions, the Uzun in the northeast has been routed. But have the southwest, northwest, and other regions also been routed? In this battle, have you seen Hoshu Wuzong, Longkinba, or any of the other Tibetan generals? Wang Chong faintly smiled. This isn't the case. The dark-faced Annam Protectorate general couldn't help but awkwardly say. Since only one of the 4 sides has been routed, and Longkinba and Hoshu Wuzong haven't appeared, how can we talk about defeating them? Moreover, have you forgotten that there are still more than 300,000 soldiers of Meng Shizhao's army? If we fight with the Uzun until both sides are heavily wounded, and Meng Shizhao's army finally appears, what will we do? What will happen to the people of the southwest? Have you forgotten the true responsibility of the Annam Protectorate? At the end, Wang Chong's expression was harsh and stern. Annam. The existence of a protectorate had never been purely for the sake of war, because war would never end. The ultimate goal of war was to protect the peace of one side. Whether it was Annam, Anbei, Anong, or Anshi, they were all the same. When soldiers immersed in intense battle for so long, they would forget the responsibility on their shoulders. The dark-faced general of the Annan Protectorate army instantly paled, and for a moment he found himself unable to speak. Let's go. Our Tang dynasty will fight Uzun and Meng Shizhao sooner or later, but not now. There will come a day when they will pay the price. Even if it's not this one. Wang Chong did not continue speaking. Hiya. His horse galloped forward. There were even more things waiting for him there. Young master, what about Longkinba? Chen Shusun only glanced at the dark-faced Annam Protectorate general in the distance before urging his horse to follow. He was a little far away, so he couldn't hear what Wang Chong was discussing with him. He was currently concerned about another matter. Although Hoshu Wuzong has been transferred away, Longkinba and the other generals aren't so easy to deal with. Longkinba might not be as good as Hoshu Wuzong, but he's probably not too far off. He and the other Uzun generals might appear at any moment. Don't worry, he can't come right now. Wang Chong grinned and waved his hand. Chen Shusun stared in shock at Wang Chong, not understanding why he would say this. Haven't you noticed? I'm already controlling the Uzun soldiers on the left and right sides. As long as these 2 sides remain in disarray, no matter how urgent Longkinba is, he won't be able to get here in a short amount of time. Moreover, now that Hoshu Wuzong has gone to the southwest, someone will definitely take his place in the central army. This person will undoubtedly be Longkinba. Given the distance between him and this place, I've already arranged a shield for him. As long as I'm willing, this shield will always be there for him. Wang Chong indifferently said. Buzz. Chen Shusun's mind was shaken. One moment, he would look at the calm Wang Chong. The next moment, he would look at the chaotic Uzun soldiers, his mouth agape, unable to say a single word. I didn't think that he could even do this. Although Chen Shusun had long ago noticed that Wang Chong was rhythmically attacking the main army, he had not expected that Wang Chong was using this method to control the Uzun army. As the great general of the Uzun, Hoshu Wuzong's strength was renowned throughout the world, and he was a heaven master of the Southwest Triangle. And Longkinba, as the leader of the 5 tiger generals, was also an extremely terrifying existence. But both of them had been silently transferred away by Wang Chong and crippled of their martial arts. The 2 of them hadn't even been able to get to the battlefield in time, nor had they been able to get close. The art of war and commanding an army at this level could already be considered an art. This completely refreshed Chen Shusun's impression of the battlefield as cruel, cold-blooded, tyrannical, and cold. Chen Shusun had never imagined that a single person could reach this level in the art of command. Let's go. We don't have much time left. Wang Chong said. With this order, all the infantry began to run at full speed through the rain. Those who could seize warhorses did so. In addition, the more mobile cavalry remained in the rear to cover the retreat. Let's go! In the last wave, the Uzun army was still in chaos, unable to form an effective ambush. Wang Chong's forces swiftly left. Wang Chong had expanded the halo of Dusk Stallion to its greatest extent, and this war halo was now playing an important role. Before the rest of the Uzun army could catch up, Wang Chong's forces had already pulled away and vanished into the darkness. Boom! Not long after Wang Chong's forces left, there was a boom as a blazing bolt of stellar energy exploded in the rain, sending 20-some Uzun cavalry and their horses flying. In the rear, Longkinba was so angry that his face was red as he charged forward. "All of you, get out of my way!" Longkinba's furious roar resounded in all directions. Swish! As he stared in the direction Wang Chong's forces had fled, Longkinba immediately took a step forward and seized the warhorse of a nearby Uzun cavalry, effortlessly pushing it 10-some zhang away. "Everyone follow me! Anyone who dares to disobey will be dealt with according to military law. Damn Tang people, I'd like to see where you can run to." With this order, Longkinba charged out, seething with a murderous aura. Behind him, several thousand Uzun cavalry followed, their hooves pounding far into the night. "After them! I want to kill all these bastards." Longkinba's right hand reached behind his back and pulled out an extra-large scimitar the width of a palm. This scimitar was not an ordinary Uzun scimitar. In some aspects, it was rather similar to a scimitar of the Central Plains. "Follow General. Anyone who dares to fall behind will be dealt with according to military law. Charge! The Uzun don't need cowards. All of you follow me." The faces of Longkinba's subordinates were drenched in the rain as they harshly bellowed. Under the leadership of these people, Longkinba's 7,000 to 8,000 soldiers quickly gathered together, and even more were gathering like a dark cloud from the rear. The air was tense and ready to fight. Warhorses galloped forward, and under Longkinba's rallying call, the Uzun were gathering like a cloud. The Annam Protectorate was still in a predicament. "General, we've come to help you." Suddenly, a group of 4,000 to 5,000 fully armed soldiers shouted and rushed over from another direction. It seemed like reinforcements were rushing over from the southeast and other directions. "Bastards, hurry up! Don't let them get away!" Longkinba clenched his teeth and roared. "Yes, milord." Vaguely, that person said in a low voice. This man had spoken without saying anything, but now that he did, Longkinba shivered as a bad premonition arose in his mind. The first part of this person's words was fine, but the latter part was clearly spoken in a strange and indistinct accent. The people of the Uzun would never speak like this, nor would they speak with this sort of accent. But before Longkinba could think any further, the warhorse began to rumble forward, and the group was rapidly closing in on him. He felt like a sharp blade was pressing against his back, as if something sharp had locked onto him from a distance. Longkinba's heart chilled as he suddenly understood. Damn it, the Tang people! A bolt of lightning flashed through Longkinba's mind as he suddenly understood what was going on. The Tang people! These Uzun people, with strange accents, were actually the Tang people. There had been incidents in the past where the Tang people had disguised themselves as Uzun people to attack an army, but Longkinba had never imagined that they would be so ruthless and daring as to leave behind an army to pretend to be their own people. And they were rapidly approaching him at this time. These bastards! Longkinba's face was savage and his teeth were clenched so tightly that they were about to break. The craftiness and arrogance of these people had already surpassed his imagination. They had also used all sorts of methods to deal with him. But if they thought that they could use this sort of method to deal with him, then they were far too naive and self-deceiving. "Thing that doesn't know its limits, die for me!" Longkinba roared like a tiger, and without even thinking, he gripped his saber and fiercely slashed at Wang Chong. Rumble! The world trembled as a savage dragon of black and gold appeared behind Longkinba. With a wave of its tail, it transformed into a majestic saber energy that slashed forward. Boom! The saber energy did not cause the expected upheaval. Instead, there was a boom as the saber energy seemed to be blocked by something. General Long's saber energy is excellent. Come, take a punch from me. A vortex rapidly formed in the air and began to expand like a hurricane, pushing toward Longkinba. Wang Yan! Longkinba paled in fright at this voice. However, this was not the end. Another deep voice came from another direction. General Long, there's still someone else. This voice was Xinyu Zhongtong. He had been ambushed. Longkinba's face instantly turned as white as a sheet of paper. He had clearly seen Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong leave, but he had never expected that they would remain behind and ambush him. Rumble! With a heaven-shaking boom, Longkinba's saber energy barely managed to block the blow before being sent flying by Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong. Longkinba's saber energy was definitely not weak. As the leader of the 5 Tiger Generals, Longkinba had absolute confidence in his own strength. If it were just Wang Yan or Xinyu Zhongtong, Longkinba would have nothing to fear. But when these 2 old generals of the Tang dynasty worked together, not even Longkinba was a match for them. Bang! Chapter 546. Milord! This sudden attack left everyone dumbfounded. At this time, no one had expected that the Tang dynasty would still have a trick up their sleeves, a disguised army lying in wait in the rear. And the ones leading them were Xinyu Zhongtong and the famous general of the Tang dynasty, Wang Yan. These 2 were experts second only to great General Huoshu Wuzong and could last for a very long time in a one-on-one battle, much less working together to ambush Longkinba. This single attack had heavily injured Longkinba. Protect Milord! Damn it, the Tang people are too despicable. Stop them! Kill them! All the Uzun soldiers instantly reacted, all of them furious and shocked. Heedless of their own safety, they charged at Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan. But before they could charge over, the thousands of elite cavalry of the Annan Protectorate army shot forward like a sharp knife, cutting through the Tibetan formation and cutting the pursuing force in 2. Kaio! Kaio! The clip-clop of hooves resounded through the air. The Annan Protectorate's attack had come from a completely unexpected direction. Even Longkinba had been fooled, let alone the others. Rumble! Warhorse against warhorse, saber against sword, clashed against saber. Caught off guard, the Uzun soldiers were forced back again and again under the assault of the Annan Protectorate. A single charge from this army of 6,000 to 7,000 had instantly thrown them into chaos. Kill him! The eyes of Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan blazed with cold light as they locked onto Longkinba on the crouching ox rock. This fierce general of the Uzun was the leader of the 5 Tiger Generals. Killing him would definitely deal a massive blow to the morale of the Uzun soldiers. Clatter! 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 The 2 highest commanders of the southwest of the Tang dynasty unleashed a lethal attack on Longkinba, the leader of the 5 Tiger Generals. Protect the Lord! We must not let the Tang people hurt His Excellency. In an instant, all the surrounding Uzun generals were so anxious that their eyes turned red. They led the surrounding soldiers and charged madly towards Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan. Shadows of Uzun yaks appeared in the air one after another, mixed with the shadows of monsters from the legends of the highlands. Torrents of stellar energy blotted out the sky and covered the earth, like countless raging dragons and soaring dragons, slamming towards Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong from all directions. Boom! Boom! In the blink of an eye, 2 extremely deep and majestic stellar energies suddenly erupted from the depths of the crowd, growing larger and larger. That powerful force was incomparably tyrannical. In just an instant, it shattered the torrents of stellar energy that were surging over from all directions. Not only that, the 2 extremely powerful stellar energies swept through the air, sending those charging Uzun generals and soldiers flying like ragdolls. Aya! Ah! Screams resounded through the air. Not even these brave and fierce Uzun soldiers working together were a match for the 2 highest commanders of the southwest of the Tang dynasty. Boom! The 2 Tang commanders sent the Uzun soldiers flying, not slowing down at all as they charged at Longkinba. Huoshu Wuzong isn't here, so this is the best chance to kill Longkinba. Brother Gingji, attack with all your strength. Don't give him a chance. Xinyu Zhongtong's furious roar resounded through the sky. In Lion City, Longkinba was undoubtedly a massive threat. This was one of the 5 tiger generals from the Great Snow Mountain Temple. He was extremely powerful and had a variety of techniques. In a one-on-one battle, no one beneath Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan could be a match for him. But no one else could do anything to him. Now that Longkinba was alone and deep in enemy territory, this was the best chance to kill him. No matter how astonishing his strength was, against the combined attacks of Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan, 2 Tang dynasty commanders, only death awaited him. "Milord, it's not good." Just when Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan were about to launch their lethal attack, a figure suddenly flashed past. Before anyone could clearly see who it was, Longkinba was pushed away. An Uzun general had charged forward and pushed Longkinba away. Longkinba reacted very quickly. He extended a hand, grabbed a highland steed with a glossy mane, and mounted it. "Hiya!" Squeezing his legs, Longkinba didn't even look behind him as he pushed through the crowd and fled like a bolt of lightning. If either Xinyu Zhongtong or Wang Yan appeared, he would dare to exchange a few blows with them. But he was already injured. If he stayed any longer, he would assuredly die. Unless Great General Huashu Wuzong appeared, no one would be able to block the attacks of the 2 of them. "Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan, you won't be able to escape the southwest. I'll definitely tear the 2 of you to pieces." Longkinba's enraged voice came from the distance, but his feet did not slow down. Meanwhile, the other Uzun cavalry were charging at the pair with all their might. "Protect milord." "Stop them." Wang Yan also commanded the army to respond. Compared to one-on-one combat, he was still more proficient in this kind of military confrontation. Damn it. As he watched Longkinba flee and use the other Uzun cavalry to stop him, Xinyu Zhongtong's face darkened. His 5 fingers dug into the body of the Uzun general like a steel chisel, and then he threw him onto the boulder. Boundless stellar energy poured into his body, directly shattering his meridians and internal organs and extinguishing his vitality. A good chance completely wasted. His face was filled with unwillingness as he spoke. A valiant general of the plateau like Longkinba was usually with the other fierce Uzun generals, Huashu Wuzong or Daluan Ruozan. If he hadn't been in such a rush to pursue the fleeing Annam Protectorate, he would never have given them such a chance. If he missed this chance, it would be very difficult to get it in the future. "No. I have to kill him no matter what." Xinyu Zhongtong hardened his heart and was just about to chase after Longkinba and put an end to him, but at this moment, the situation suddenly changed. Roar! A dragon-like roar reverberated through the air, soaring into the sky from afar. This sound was imbued with boundless might, creating a pillar of vacuum in the midst of the rain. With this pillar of vacuum as the center, ripples began to spread out in every direction. It was like massive ripples had appeared in the air. All of the torrential rain was a dazzling white. It was blown up wave after wave, and it kept on shaking. Huashu Wuzong. Xinyu Zhongtong's expression sank and his heart trembled. In all of the southwest, only Yusang Great General Huashu Huaizong possessed such vigorous stellar energy and was able to use his voice to open a path through the torrential rain. "He's here." Just as Chonger predicted, he's very fast. Wang Yan had been in the middle of commanding his army to scatter the Uzun army, but when he heard the roar, he had walked over. Huashu Wuzong is on his way, and the other armies are also on their way. It's not good for us to stay too far away. Once we scatter these pursuers and use them to block our pursuers, our mission will be complete. Wang Yan glanced up at the sky. The sky, which was originally dim, was now completely dark. This attempt to break out of Lion City had taken a long time, and coupled with the time it had taken for the soldiers to engage in close combat, it was already nightfall. Although the sky had darkened, the torrential rain had not stopped. The heavy downpour, coupled with the darkness of the night, was the best time and place for them to break out of the encirclement. The Uzun army had already lost them several times during the day, and now that it was nightfall, even good eyesight was useless, making it even more difficult to track down the Annam Protectorate. Even if they all rode horses, it would be useless. This attempt to break out of the encirclement could be considered a complete success. This was what Wang Chong had analyzed to Wang Yan. "There's no other way." Although I really want to fight to the death with Huoshu Wuzong, young Master Chong is correct. Now is not the time to fight to the death with them. Xinyu Zhongtong's eyes were red as he viciously stared into the distance. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to turn his horse around and leave with Wang Yan. Everyone hear my order. Quickly retreat. Although he wanted to kill Long Qinba, the person Xinyu Zhongtong wanted to kill the most was Huoshu Wuzong. In the southwest of the Tang dynasty, this Uzun great general would forever be the Annam Protectorate's greatest foe. Gallop. With Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan bringing up the rear, the party quickly vanished into the rainy night. Where they? Just as Xinyu Zhongtong's party had left, another stalwart figure, vigorous and imposing like a mountain, appeared on the scene. Clang. His right hand loosened, and a Wenzhong long saber inscribed with refined steel fell to the ground, splashing mud into the air. "Milord, they've already left," an Uzun officer said, his body trembling as he bowed. "Who injured you?" Huoshu Wuzong turned his head to look at Long Qinba. His face was as gloomy and emotionless as water. Thick stellar energy flowed on the surface of his body, transforming into blazing flames. Of the 5 elements and 5 elements, Huoshu Wuzong was one of the most tyrannical and violent fire element experts. The flames on his body could even be seen from far away in the dark night. Reporting to General, it was Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan. Long Qinba also lowered his head, a fearful expression on his face. Although he was renowned among the Uzun for his courage, not even caring about Xinyu Zhongtong or Wang Yan, he was still extremely fearful of great General Huoshu Wuzong. Or perhaps even more so, he felt reverence. Huoshu Wuzong had made his name even earlier than he had. Long ago, his name had floated over the Ngari royal lineage of the Uzun Plateau. He was a true general, born for battle. Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan? It seems like we've really met our match this time. He can even order around the two of them. Huoshu Wuzong gazed in the direction Xinyu Zhongtong and the others had left, an extremely cold light in his eyes. Long Qinba stared blankly at Huoshu Wuzong in confusion, not understanding what the great general was saying. Using the luring of the tiger from the mountain to lure me away, and then using an ambush to ambush you while you were in pursuit, killing you in one fell swoop. You don't think that this was the idea of Xinyu Zhongtong or Wang Yan, do you? Huoshu Wuzong sneered. He had to admit that he had made an error in judgment. His opponent was even smarter than he had imagined. Forget about everything else, it seemed like even his own actions had been calculated by him. Moreover, breaking out of an encirclement had never been a simple matter, especially when it involved an army of nearly 100,000. Huoshu Wuzong had originally believed that no matter what, he would be able to make it in time. But he hadn't expected that his opponent would be able to organize his army in such an orderly manner. Breaking out, defending, counterattacking, everything had been carried out like flowing water. There hadn't been the slightest chaos in such a major operation. And he had even used the fastest speed to order the tens of thousands of soldiers on the mountain to leave. Not even Huoshu Wuzong could do such a thing in such a short amount of time and with such speed. This was something that only existed in theory. His opponent's command of the army had already reached a nearly miraculous and inconceivable level. Chapter 547. This. Long Qinba was dumbfounded. He had been so focused on killing the enemy that he hadn't really thought about this for a moment. Truly, in the southwest, the Uzun Empire had long been at odds with the Tang dynasty, so it was extremely familiar with the generals of the southwest. Although Xinyu Zhongtong wasn't some mediocre or incompetent general, he was also not some nimble and crafty general. He was a classic example of a general defending a city. As for Wang Yan, he had heard of him before. In this clash of lions, he had a first-hand experience. Although this was a general of both offense and defense, he was more skilled in defense than offense, a Tang dynasty general. No matter which one of the two, it was impossible for them to come up with such a strategy of backstabbing and ambushing in the dark. Then, milord, what do we do now? They definitely can't have gotten far. Should we pursue them? Longkinba said, his heart suddenly filled with a fierce desire to kill. In a moment of carelessness, he had almost been killed by Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Yan. No matter who the person behind the curtains was, the fact that they could come up with this sort of plan made Longkinba feel an intense desire to kill. There's no need. But before Longkinba could think of a way to find that hidden Tang Dynasty general, he heard a voice that left him flabbergasted. Since it's like this, let them go. But milord, how can we just let them go? Longkinba's eyes went wide as he stared in surprise at Great General Huoshu Wuzong. The great general had always been famed for his bravery, but now that the Tang people hadn't gotten far, he had given up. This was truly beyond Longkinba's expectations. This was not the great general's usual style. More importantly, Longkinba was extremely unwilling. It's already dark and there's a torrential downpour. Where will you go to find them? In addition, in this sort of weather, cavalry are practically useless. If my guess is correct, that Tang general likes this sort of strategy. If we pursue them, they'll definitely have other ambushes. We won't be able to see them in the dark, and if we get ambushed, we'll suffer even greater losses. Moreover, there were a few times when they disguised themselves as our people. They could ambush us at any time in the dark. Do you know how to defend against them? In the last sentence, Huoshu Wuzong got to the point. The Tang general on the other side was skilled in calculations, and his use of the art of war had reached perfection. His level was far above that of Xinyu Zhongtong, Wang Yan, and the generals of the southwest. Just now, even he had been tricked. More importantly, even Huoshu Wuzong had to admit that it was impossible to defend against the enemy's method of disguising as him and ambushing him in all sorts of ways. Even Huoshu Wuzong had no good way to deal with it. This was an army of 100,000, not 10 or 20,000. If the other party were to impersonate him, it would be impossible to tell the difference. He had to admit that this move was really annoying. But Longkinba hesitated. He had originally thought that it would be a large-scale attack, but this result was really out of his expectations. But Longkinba had to admit that he had almost died to this move. With the sky darkening and the curtain of night descending, it would be even easier to ambush him. Moreover, his opponent even knew a little Uzun. Wasn't it said that no one in the Tang dynasty knew how to speak Uzun? With a fierce fling of his right hand, a fierce and tyrannical stellar energy exploded out of Longkinba's body and smashed into the ground, creating a hole about 1 zhang deep. It was obvious that Longkinba had no choice but to accept Huoshu Wuzong's order. Put it down. I never said that I was going to let them go. Huoshu Wuzong stared in the direction the Anan Protectorate army had left, his eyes exuding a cold light. The storm will eventually stop and the night will pass. Once the sky brightens and the rain passes, not even that Tang general with his heaven-shaking abilities will be able to do anything. What he can use now won't necessarily be able to use when the time comes. In addition, don't forget that we still have 300,000 of Meng Shizhao's allies there. It won't be too late for us to join forces with Meng Shizhao to deal with them in the daytime. And don't forget that this is a war between Meng Shizhao and the Tang dynasty. It's about time they put in some effort. This is also Prime Minister's will. The Prime Minister that Huoshu Wuzong spoke of was naturally Daluan Ruozhen. In the entire Ngari royal lineage, only the Prime Minister of the Ngari royal lineage could order Huoshu Wuzong around and use his reins to reign in this valiant general. Longkinba had not expected this to be Prime Minister's will. Don't be unwilling. If you can obtain the greatest harvest with the smallest price, why not do it? Don't forget that the goal of our Uzun warriors isn't just the Southwest and the Anan Protectorate. In the future, we will have even greater battles. We can't lose too many people on a single battlefield. Huoshu Wuzong indifferently said. Yes, my lord. Longkinba had been unwilling at first, but upon hearing these words he immediately bowed, his heart filled with deep respect. The southwest was only a corner of the Tang dynasty of the Central Plains, so the greater battlefield that Huoshu Wuzong spoke of naturally wasn't this place. It was the struggle between the Uzun and the Tang dynasty. This was no secret among the upper echelon generals of the Uzun Plateau. A centipede dies, but it doesn't fall down. From the moment the Tang Empire and the Tsenpo decided to attack the Tang dynasty, the war between the Uzun Empire and the Tang dynasty had already begun. This war in the southwest was only the prelude to an even greater war. Although the Tang dynasty had declined and was no longer the same as before, it still possessed a vast, glorious, and terrifying army. The southwestern protectorate was only one of the protectorates of the Tang dynasty. Although the Uzun Empire had already made its decision, all the generals were extremely cautious about this war with the Tang dynasty. Killing them a day earlier and killing them a little later. Let them struggle for a little while. With these words, Huoshu Wuzong turned his horse around and immediately rode back. This operation could be said to have been extremely unsuccessful. The results achieved by the army of 100,000 were completely different from what he had imagined. But none of this was because his side was too incompetent, nor was it because Xinyu Zhongtong and the Anan tribes were too powerful. It was because of the military tactics adopted by the Tang dynasty. This result had truly caught everyone by surprise. The casualties were also rather high. Moreover, this war had also allowed Huoshu Wuzong to faintly discover some things, all of which he needed to deal with. Comparatively speaking, the pursuit of Xinyu Zhongtong and the others wasn't that urgent. After all, it was only a day. They couldn't possibly run out of the southwestern territory. Huoshu Wuzong quickly disappeared into the night. Behind him, the Uzun army also slowly moved in the opposite direction of Wang Chong and the others, disappearing into the heavy rain. This torrential pursuit ended in such an unexpected manner. But the tense atmosphere that hung over the southwestern skies did not dissipate. On the contrary, it became even more intense. The heavy rain was boundless. Several large trees with twisted branches stretched across the earth. The ground was covered in a thick layer of mud. The combination of the perennial rainstorm and the mud had practically transformed the southwestern lands into a swamp. And in a place invisible to the naked eye, a faint murderous aura pervaded the air. Time slowly passed. All was quiet. Except for the pitter-patter of the rain, nothing else could be heard. After some time, suddenly, the ground began to loosen. The mud covering its surface suddenly bulged, and then a muscular man leapt out like a fish. What's going on? Uzun's people actually left? Su Shiping gazed in the direction of the distant towering mountain, his face full of confusion. The war between Uzun and the Tang dynasty had already progressed to this point, and there was no longer any room for negotiation. Given Uzun's position and Huoshu Wuzong's temperament, the fact that they had not pursued them was truly unexpected. It's hard to say. Don't be careless for now. Perhaps Uzun's people are just deliberately lulling us into a false sense of security. Given Uzun's usual valiance, they won't give up so easily. On the side, Su Anduin also stood up from the mud. This sort of disguise was truly very uncomfortable. One had to cover their entire body with filthy mud, even covering the cracks in their armor. Although this truly made it harder to detect, their bodies were already soaked to the bone. Adding on this layer of mud was even more uncomfortable. There's no need to think about it. They've already left. A figure slid down from a large tree nearby. Wang Chong tiptoed and gently slid down from the tree to the ground. He was wearing that heavy armor, but his expression did not relax at all. Uzun's people can set up a deceptive formation and defend without attacking. But no matter how they defend, they can't hide the sound of the horse's hooves. Even if they have a way to find so many cloths to cover the hooves and hide the sound, they can't hide the sneezing and neighing of the horses. With so many war horses, it's impossible to do this. This isn't the style of Uzun's people. Wang Chong said this, but his brows were deeply furrowed. I originally thought that Uzun's people would take advantage of the situation to pursue us, but I didn't expect to underestimate them. Huoshu Wuzong probably predicted that we would set up an ambush along the way, so he cancelled it. Moreover, cavalry are not suited for fighting at night, and there's also a storm. Huoshu Wuzong must have known that the time was not good and that we were prepared, so he made the prompt decision to simply give up. I originally thought that Huoshu Wuzong was only valiant, but it seems that I truly underestimated him. Just based on this decisiveness, Huoshu Wuzong is assuredly a great foe of our southwest. Although the enemy's retreat was beneficial to them, the enemy returning in defeat and the enemy retreating on their own initiative were two completely different concepts. No matter what, this result was not good for him or the Tang dynasty. This is even more troublesome than I imagined, Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he gazed to the southwest. Chapter 548. Let's go! Wang Chong stood beside two large trees and waved his hand. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. In the empty space where only Wang Chong, Su Anduin, and Su Shiping stood, from near to far, from front to back, countless silhouettes stood up from the ground. In just a short while, it was as if thousands of people had come to life. Some grabbed weapons, some shook off the mud on their bodies, and they all stood up from the ground. Even farther away, in the densely packed hills, more and more soldiers of the Annan Protectorate Army were rising from the ground. Huoshu Wuzong's judgment was correct. Wang Chong had indeed prepared a huge trap for Huoshu Wuzong to fall into. Moreover, it was a trap made up of 40 to 50,000 soldiers. In addition to the detouring cavalry, the rear guards, and the bait, it was indeed enough to make Huoshu Wuzong suffer. But now, all of this was clearly useless. Pass down my order. Ignore the Uzun soldiers behind us. Everyone, march at full speed. We only have one day. After today, Huoshu Wuzong and Meng Shizhao will join forces and chase us at full speed. This is our only chance. No matter what, we have to reach that location before then. If we can't reach it, all of us will die. That is our only chance of survival. Wang Chong looked at the generals gathering around him and said solemnly. The short pursuit with Huoshu Wuzong and the Uzun army had temporarily come to an end. But for Wang Chong, this war was far from over. But this time, his opponent was no longer the Uzun cavalry led by Huoshu Wuzong, but the Annam Protectorate itself. Escaping from Lion City and successfully breaking through the encirclement only meant that they had a chance to struggle at death's door. Behind the glory of the merger of the two Annam Protectorate, there were too many hidden dangers. Without the cover of Lion City, without the cover of darkness, and without the once-in-a-decade torrential rain, the Tang army was simply incapable of dealing with the Mengshi Yusang army. More importantly, the southwest no longer had any food. The warhorses neighed loudly. The group of people braved the heavy rain and headed northeast at their fastest speed. The southwest had finally welcomed a night of peace since the war began, the last night of peace. Boom! A dazzling bolt of lightning snaked through the dark clouds over the capital. But unlike the torrential rains of the southwest, there was only thunder and no rain in the capital. In the folklore, this kind of thunder was called sky thunder. And this sort of weather had persisted in the capital for several days. The southwest was in danger and the front line was about to fall. In all directions, Longxi, Anbei, Anxi, and Anong were also engaged in fierce battles. The atmosphere was tense. Such a situation had never occurred since the founding of the dynasty. Eunuch Gao, I must trouble you to make an exception and report this to His Majesty. Say that this lowly subject requests an audience. In the forbidden area of the inner court of the imperial palace, a square-headed, big-eared, chubby and amiable eunuch in embroidered robes with a round collar stood in front of the jade steps. In front of him were many civil and military officials kneeling on the ground, as well as the head of the imperial army. Eunuch Gao, I must trouble you to report to the Holy Emperor that the southwest is in danger. Our 200,000 imperial army soldiers are willing to march to the southwest. Right now, all sides are in a state of emergency. For the time being, there are no more soldiers available. Mobilizing the imperial army is the best method. Eunuch Gao, everything must be done according to plan. A figure was kneeling in front of the steps, fiercely kowtowing. It was the commander of the imperial army, Zhao Fengchen. The war in the southwest had been going on for a very long time. The several thousand clan experts and mercenaries led by Wang Chong had vanished into the south like a bubble, leaving not the slightest ripple. In the view of many people, his fate was already clear. Several thousand soldiers was like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood in the southwest. Without a massive army, Resisting the Mengshi Yusang army of more than 500,000 soldiers was like striking a rock with an egg. Thus, the fate of Wang Chang's army had actually been known from the very start. Even though they admired his courage, this was not a wise decision. In the end, they would still have to rely on the army of the imperial court. Haha, Commander Zhao, please don't say such foolish words. With 200,000 imperial army soldiers marching south, who will defend the capital? Once the foreign cavalry launch a surprise attack, are you planning to leave the Holy Emperor surrounded by the foreign horsemen? Although the Holy Emperor has the ability to move the heavens and doesn't need to worry about this, will we, his subjects, still have the face to continue living in this world? The embroidered robed eunuch faintly smiled. In the imperial palace, the only person with the surname Gao and the respect of the civil and military officials and the commander of the imperial army was the Holy Emperor's personal eunuch Gao, chief steward of the imperial household, Gao Lisher. In the inner court, whether young or old, eunuchs or maids, anyone with the surname Gao would all change their surname. Thus, in the inner court of the imperial palace, there was only one person with the surname Gao and the title of eunuch Gao. The Gao bloodline had served 3 generations of emperors and had always been known as loyal eunuchs. Their status in the Tang dynasty and the palace was transcendent, far beyond that of ordinary officials. Eunuch Gao is correct. We were foolish. But eunuch, time waits for no man. If the Annam Protectorate is completely wiped out, the nearly 1 million civilians of the southwest will be plunged into misery and suffering. The Mengshi Yusang army will continue to advance north and eventually reach the capital. As subjects, we naturally have to keep the enemy at the gates of the country. If we allow the foreign army to invade our subjects, how will we have the face to continue living in this world? This time, the 2 royal lineages of the Uzun have mobilized in full force. Next to Zhao Fengchen, the white-haired imperial censor Duan Chao sighed. The Tang dynasty was besieged on all sides. The Bureau of Military Personnel, Bureau of Personnel, and Bureau of Revenue had all been mobilized, doing all they could to recruit soldiers. But all of this was time-consuming and laborious. In order to resist the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army, the amount of provisions, weapons, and war horses required was no small sum, and none of this could be accomplished in a short period of time. War had always been a system, not a simple matter of mobilizing soldiers. But time waited for no man. Every day, grievous news came from the south. And the situation in the empire had everyone in the capital, from the ministers to the common people, in a state of panic. The current Tang dynasty was experiencing an upheaval that it had never experienced before. As long as one was a member of the Tang people, as long as one had a patriotic heart, there was no one who was not worried. Every day, the imperial court was discussing countermeasures, the debate continuing at every moment. An endless stream of officials wanted to enter the palace and meet with the Holy Emperor. But all of them had been stopped. In this crisis that affected the entire Tang dynasty, the most supreme existence of the Tang dynasty, the Holy Emperor, had remained secretive about his stance. No one knew what the Holy Emperor was thinking. Even now, the Holy Emperor had not made his stance clear, nor had he made any decision. Imperial Censor Duan. Eunuch Gao couldn't help but sigh at the old censor's words. You know that I have a patriotic heart, but His Majesty is currently resting, and he has long since ordered that no one is to disturb him. There's nothing I can do. The officials looked at each other in dismay. This sort of excuse had already been used to fool many people. Eunuch Gao, just what is His Majesty's stance? Just what is going on here? His Majesty has never been like this before. The old censor suddenly raised his head, his eyes blazing like the edge of a blade. The current Holy Emperor was hailed as the most ambitious ruler in the history of the Central Plains, and he was also an emperor with grand ambitions. His talent and strategy, his decisiveness in killing, his authoritarianism, and his sharp eyes allowed the great Tang to sweep through the barbarians in his generation and reach an unprecedented golden age. The previous Holy Emperor had been a man of great talent and bold vision. No matter what he did, he always had a well-thought-out plan. There was no need for the imperial court to discuss it. He already knew what to do. All of his decisions were able to win the hearts of the people. But now, the southwest was engulfed in the flames of war. The Annam Protectorate had been defeated, Li Jingji had been ambushed and killed, and all the protectorates in the north, south, east, and west had been attacked, but the Holy Emperor had still not made a move. This had never happened before. As an old censor who had served 2 generations of emperors, Duan Chao was truly unwilling to see this happen. "Ah, old censor, don't you already know about that matter?" Upon hearing these words, the old censor's body trembled as if recalling something. He opened his mouth and was about to say something, but Eunuch Gao raised his hand and stopped him. "Let bygones be bygones. It's enough that you and I know about this matter. As for the southwest, there's no need for you to worry. His Majesty has his own plans. Just because he hasn't made his stance clear doesn't mean that His Majesty isn't concerned about the situation in the southwest. Old censor, you've served His Majesty for so many years. Surely you don't understand this?" Duan Chao's body trembled, but he heaved a long sigh of relief. No matter what, as long as His Majesty had made a decision, it was the best result. This was also his greatest harvest from this trip. "I understand. Many thanks, Eunuch Gao. General Zhao, let's go." Duan Chao pulled the confused Zhao Fengchen up and quickly left the palace. A gentle breeze brushed past the porch, causing the bells to shake one by one. Eunuch Gao hid his hands in his sleeves, a smile on his lips as he watched Duan Chao's group disappear into the distance. A moment later, when the group had disappeared, the smile on Eunuch Gao's face slowly receded. He sighed deeply, worry creeping up his brow like a dark cloud. Soon, Eunuch Gao entered the sacred hall. The golden drapes were layered upon one another, and the golden dragons on them were vivid and lifelike, as if they were about to leap out of the drapes. And in the depths of the drapes stood the most noble figure in the world. Although he was doing nothing, merely sitting on the drapes, he exuded an aura that reigned supreme over all beings in the world. He was like a deity whom everyone revered. But for some reason, when Eunuch Gao saw that enormous aura that surpassed all experts in the world, he felt a tinge of weakness. But soon, Eunuch Gao tossed this thought to the back of his mind. Regardless of whether His Majesty was the lofty sage emperor or the prince from back then, in his heart, His Majesty would always be the existence that he respected the most, admired the most, and loved the most in this world. "Your Majesty, are we really not going to do anything about the southwest?" Chapter 549. After what seemed like an instant and also like countless eons, just when Eunuch Gao thought that he would never get an answer, a noble and dignified voice finally resounded through the hall. "The southwest, it is still not the time. Your Holiness." Eunuch Gao's heart trembled at the Holy Emperor's voice, and he couldn't help but give a long sigh. Is it still because of that child? These words were earth-shattering. If any of the ministers of the court were present, they would assuredly be stunned. The southwest was already on the verge of collapse, but the Holy Emperor had still not made his stance known. The will of the heavens was hard to fathom, and the imperial court was filled with all sorts of conjectures. But no one had expected that all this was related to a single youth. The hall was quiet, not a sound to be heard. Behind the layers of golden curtains, that figure as lofty as the sea, as lofty as the stars in the sky, was motionless. No one knew what this lofty holy emperor of the Tang dynasty was thinking. Even Gao Lishir was the same. Although he was familiar with many things, he did not understand all of them. All things are predestined by fate. Whether it is or not, we will soon know. Behind the curtains, the Holy Emperor did not directly answer. But his words were clearly an admission. "But Your Holiness, can 5,000 soldiers really change the fate of the Southwest? Jelifeng and Daluan Ruozhen are colluding with each other, and that's an army of more than 500,000 soldiers." Eunuch Gao's head was pressed to the ground, his voice pained. In his decades of service to His Holiness, Gao Lishir had never imagined that he would doubt the Holy Emperor. But the Southwest involved more than 100,000 generals and nearly 1 million commoners. If he were to place all his hopes on a single youth, on an action that overestimated his own abilities, wasn't that no more than child's play? The hall was quiet, not a single sound could be heard. Gao Lisher was terrified, cold sweat pouring down his back, and even his palms were sweating. This was the first time he had doubted the Holy Emperor, but as the chief eunuch of the inner court and a retainer of the emperor, there were some words that he had to say. In this world, nothing is impossible. Have you forgotten how I ascended to the Great Pole? Gao Lisher's heart shook violently, and he suddenly raised his head. Of course, he knew how the Holy Emperor had ascended to the throne. At first, no one thought highly of the Holy Emperor. In fact, at the very beginning, no one even cared about him among the princes. But in the end, the Holy Emperor relied on his great talent and bold vision to create this glorious and powerful Tang dynasty, becoming an emperor admired by millions. Gao Lisher had never imagined that the Holy Emperor would have such a high evaluation of that child, even comparing him to himself. Whether or not we have misjudged him will naturally become clear once the Southwest is decided. Everything happens for a reason. Yuan Yi, you only need to know that there is a reason why I chose him. That was enough. Now, stand down. In the last sentence, the supreme being behind the veil called out Gao Lisher's secular name in one sentence. Everyone knew that eunuch Gao of the inner court was Gao Lisher, but not many people knew that this eunuch Gao's secular surname was not Gao, but Feng. Yuan Yi was his real name. The emperor would never lightly call out his secular name, but if he did, it would mean that this conversation was over. Yes, your majesty. Your servant will take his leave. Gao Lisher didn't dare to argue and obediently withdrew. After leaving the great hall, Gao Lisher stood in front of the long corridor of jade steps. As he gazed at the row upon row of splendid golden walls and the imperial palace, his heart rose and fell. Even though he had already seen the emperor and received an answer, the doubts in Gao Lisher's heart had not lessened. On the contrary, they had only intensified. The Southwest, alas, His Majesty's thoughts are becoming more and more difficult to fathom. Wang Yan, I hope that your youngest son will not disappoint His Majesty. As this thought flashed through his mind, Gao Lisher quickly descended the jade steps and left Taiji Palace. He had more important things to do. At the same time, as Gao Lisher was leaving Taiji Palace, no one knew that an even greater matter had taken place. Flap flap. The flapping of wings came from the southwest. In the setting sun, no one noticed that 2 carrier pigeons had flown over the southwest corner of the city, flying over the row upon row of roofs and into the imperial palace. What? Lion City has been breached. In the Bureau of Military Personnel's office, a hand as powerful as a pincer, its veins bulging and its fingers bulging, slammed its 5 palms against a table, shaking it so much that the metal table seemed like it would shatter. This was undoubtedly the most shocking news everyone had received in the last month or so. All this time, Lion City had been the last and greatest source of comfort for the people of the capital. Although the Annan Protectorate had been defeated, the impregnable Lion City had sheltered nearly 100,000 people from the Annam Protectorate. This was the final barrier of the Southwest. As long as the Annam Protectorate remained, the situation in the Southwest would not worsen. There was still a sliver of hope left in everyone's hearts. But no one had expected that Lion City, upon which they had entrusted all their hopes, would be breached. Are you sure there's no mistake? Could it be a false report? Lion City is impregnable. Wasn't it said that it was forged from refined inscription metal? The walls are more than 30 feet tall, so how could they be so easily breached? Moreover, didn't that place have nearly 100,000 Annam Protectorate soldiers? The voice harshly said, its voice tinged with deep shock. It was clear that it was completely unable to accept this result. My lord, this matter has already been confirmed. Our people infiltrated the Southwest more than a month ago. They personally investigated and learned of this news, and they confirmed it time and time again. Moreover, they even captured an Annam Protectorate soldier who got lost in the rain. This has already been confirmed by his own mouth. It said that Lion City ran out of food long ago. In order to prevent the Mengshi Yusang army from trapping them in the city, Protector General Xinyu and General Wang Yan decided to abandon the city and break out. Now that everyone has left, and without the protection of Lion City, with Daluan Ruozhen, Huoshu Wuzong, and all the Uzun cavalry in pursuit, the fate of all the Annam Protectorate soldiers is unknown. Everything is up to the will of the heavens. Because of the severity of this matter, the moment we received the news, we immediately rushed over 800 li, not daring to delay. On the way, we've already lost 20-some elite dragon horses. We've exhausted 10-some elite scouts to death. We've also lost 10-some pigeons and eagles. My lord, please make a decision. The scout himself had a pale complexion. The matter that attracted the most attention in the Tang dynasty and affected the most people was the Annam Protectorate of the Southwest. Although the other protectorates had also been attacked, they were insignificant compared to the Annam Protectorate. Lion City had fallen, and all the Annam Protectorate soldiers were fleeing with all their might, completely under the pursuit of the Uzun cavalry. Just the thought of this was enough to make all the Tang people pale in shock. The Annam Protectorate's meager forces were simply incapable of dealing with the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army. Everyone knew this long ago. The Annam Protectorate's fate was not going to be good, but when all this was about to become a reality, no one could accept it. From the moment they heard this news, everyone felt their hearts sink. It was like a massive boulder was pressing down on their chests, making it so that even taking a breath required endless energy. The Law of Military Affairs Office was deathly still. All the important officials of the Bureau of Military Personnel had ashen faces, their faces ashen. But suddenly, the sound of a porcelain cup shattering could be heard. Everyone subconsciously turned in the direction of the sound. In the direction of the main gate, Zhangzhou Jianxiong had just stepped over the threshold, the teacup in his hand crushed into pieces. Zhangzhou Jianxiong's face was ashen and unsightly. It's over. The Southwest is about to be lost. 180,000 elites have been destroyed. How could this be? Reinforcements. 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 While there's still a chance, hurry and send reinforcements. It's too late. Even if we send reinforcements, it's already too late. And besides, where will the reinforcements come from? Are we just going to let this go? This is a calamity for the Tang dynasty. This is a calamity the Central Plains has never seen before. The Law of Military Affairs, the Bureau of Personnel, the Bureau of Revenue, the Bureau of Works, the news from the Southwest seemed to grow wings, flying inside and out of the palace, spreading to all the departments of the 6 bureaus. Like a tsunami, the incident in Lion City shook the entire imperial court. Fear, unease, anxiety, all sorts of emotions filled the capital. The mood in the capital was grave, and even the markets were much quieter, lacking the usual hustle and bustle. How could this be? It can't be, it can't be. In the Wang family residence, Wang Zhen's big uncle slammed his fist on the table, his chest heaving and his face as white as a sheet of paper. Wang Yan, Wang Fu, Wang Chong. Chapter 550. The Wang clan had 4 siblings. The eldest son Wang Zhen, the second queen Ru Shuang, the third Wang Yan, and the fourth Wang Mi. Wang Ru Shuang was a married woman, so she could be considered half an outsider. She could not be considered a legitimate member of the clan. Wang Mi was the commander of the Imperial Army training camp. Although his status was not low, he could not enter the court or go to the barracks. He simply could not inherit the authority and status of the Wang clan. The only ones who truly inherited the Wang clan's status and influence were the eldest son Wang Zhen and the third son Wang Yan. Wang Zhen pursued the literary path while Wang Yan pursued the martial path. The 2 brothers pursued completely different fields of endeavor. And the Wang clan's influence on the martial path rested entirely on the shoulders of Wang Yan and his sons. Even though Wang Zhen and Wang Yan were competing against each other at the very start, it was just like a person's left and right feet. Even though the shape and direction of the 2 feet were different, it was impossible for a person to walk with just one leg. Whether it was the literary path or the martial path, if one was missing a leg, the Wang clan's influence would be greatly reduced. Lion City had Wang Yan and Wang Fu, father and son. They were the most outstanding generals in the army, and also the symbolic representatives of the Wang clan in the army. With the fall of Lion City, the fate of Wang Yan and Wang Fu could be easily imagined in the face of Uzun's army of tens of thousands of cavalry. And with the fall of Lion City, Wang Chong was in an extremely perilous situation. The Mengshi Yusang army that had been freed would continue north and swiftly crush Wang Chong's army. No matter where Chonger is, find him quickly and order him to return to the capital. Send someone. Even if we have to tie him up, we have to bring him back to the capital. Wang Zhen gripped the table for support as he said these last words, his forehead drenched in cold sweat. If Wang Yan and Wang Fu died in battle, the Wang clan's influence in the future would be greatly reduced. No matter what, the Wang clan could not risk losing all its standing in the military. Wang Chong was the Wang clan's Qilin son, and he was also the junior that Wang Zhen had placed the greatest hopes on. Wang Zhen's expectations of him far surpassed those of his own son, Wang Li. No matter what, Wang Chong could not be allowed to die. Go! Following Wang Zhen's order, several dozen top-notch martial arts experts rushed out from the Wang clan in a matter of seconds. Riding on their steeds, they swiftly disappeared into the southwest. The news of the 3 great training camps and the prestigious clans of the capital shook the upper echelons of the capital. Although the southwest was garrisoned by the Annan Protectorate, there was no lack of descendants of the various clans in the army. With the destruction of Lion City, it was easy to imagine what would happen to the descendants of these aristocratic families. Walala! In the chaos of the capital, no one noticed that a gray-white carrier pigeon had flown over mountains and rivers to enter the Su clan estate in the northwest corner of the capital. We finally arrived. Seated around a round sandalwood table, Su Yiqin placed her hands on the table. Looking at the note on the table, she and the others from Deflecting Blade Manor heaved a long sigh of relief. There was not a single word on the piece of paper on the table, only a simple map of the southwest. On the map that represented a mountain, someone had used a brush to heavily draw a cross. Only Su Yiqin and the people at her side understood the meaning of this symbol. The mountain on the map was the destination of this operation. After more than a month of time and effort, gathering the strength of all the clans in the capital, we finally delivered all the provisions and war machines to the destination. We've done all we can. Now, we can only rely on young master. Su Yiqin said as she gazed at the note on the table. For more than a month, she had focused all her energy on this matter. She had racked her brains and exhausted a great deal of her mind and energy. Now that everything was done, Su Yiqin began to feel waves of exhaustion. After all, she was just a woman. Perhaps to outsiders, all of this seemed very easy. She spent every day sitting in her study, doing nothing at all. But only Su Yiqin knew just how difficult it had been. The pressure she faced every day was unimaginable to an ordinary person. The Southwest was tied to the lives of more than 100,000 soldiers and nearly 1 million commoners. After Wang Chong had left for the south, he had placed his entire back in Su Yiqin's hands. This was a rare trust, but it was also an enormous pressure. This was a burden that Su Yiqin had never shouldered before. The official account's exclusive video, War God So Yong-sun, has already been uploaded. It will be updated tomorrow. Everyone, please follow me. Add the WeChat account and search for Huang Fu Chi. But Sister Qichin, is everything we've done really useful? That's right. More than 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army have been gathered in the southwest, and there are also experts like Huoshu Wizang, Jialifeng, and Daluan Ruozhen. Can young Master Chong really help the Annam Protectorate change the course of this war? Nearly 1 million caddies of provisions and war machines, are these really useful? In the study, everyone was looking at Su Yiqin. After Wang Chong left the capital, he had handed over all affairs to Su Yiqin. This also meant that Wang Chong had given a portion of his status to Su Yiqin. Right now, Su Yiqin was the #1 person in all of Deflecting Blade Manor, even among the scions of the noble clans. Moreover, unlike others, The people at Su Yichin's side would always have the most thorough understanding of the situation in the southwest. Even though Lion City had been destroyed, there was one thing that everyone knew. Up until now, Wang Chang's side had remained safe and sound. And from the very start, he had been planning all sorts of operations in an attempt to reverse the situation in the southwest. And they were part of this plan. But even so, they had no idea what role their mission would play in this war. Although they had an enormous trust in Wang Chong, not even those closest to Wang Chong knew what Wang Chong was up to. The empire's southwest was already on the verge of collapse. Even the smartest person would be powerless to reverse the situation. No one understood what Wang Chong was planning, not even Su Yichin. I'm sure that all of you understand what sort of person Wang Chong is. Although I don't know the details of his plan, I only want to say that he wouldn't do something like this for no reason. In this matter of the Southwest, I unconditionally trust him. So I hope that all of you will trust him as well. This is the only thing we can do. Su Yichin looked at the people around her, her expression unprecedentedly serious. Su Yichin had always misunderstood Wang Chong. But when the war in the southwest broke out, Su Yichin's view of Wang Chong underwent a 180-degree reversal. When the southwest was in turmoil, when the entire court and the capital were still in a state of debate, only Wang Chong had taken the initiative to step forward. He had used up all his wealth, using the enormous wealth he had accumulated with Wuzi Steel to recruit a group of experts, and then resolutely and decisively left for the south. Even though the road ahead was dangerous, even though he had long ago understood that the 500,000 soldiers of the Mengshi Yusang army, even though Hushu Wizong, Daluan Ruozhen, and Jelifeng were all renowned generals of the world, and he also understood that the final outcome was death, Wang Chong had still resolutely and decisively set off. That was the first time Su Yichin had gotten to know Wang Chong, the real Wang Chong. Su Yichin had to admit that her heart had been moved. In front of Su Yichin, all men had to bow and scrape. Su Yichin had never known what it meant to be a true man. But when she saw Wang Chong, when she saw his dispirited figure leading 5,000 soldiers out of the capital, Su Yichin suddenly understood what it meant to be a true man, a true man. Although he was only a teenager, there was a real man hidden in that youth's body. No matter what, I have to come back alive. Chapter 551. A drop of rain fell from the thick clouds, piercing through the air and landing on the muddy ground, ultimately vanishing without a trace. This was the last drop of rain after the torrential downpour. Hurry! 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 Don't fall behind! Hiya! Beneath the clouds, a black flood of steel snaked across the earth. In this black flood, black banners soared into the sky, the character for Ting engraved upon them glaringly. It had been a day and a night since they had withdrawn from battle last night. The nearly 100,000 soldiers of the Annam Protectorate had not slept or rested this entire time. Even though all of them were exhausted, even their warhorses panting, not a single one of them had stopped. And not a single one of them had complained. This time, they were all in a race against time, fighting for that sliver of a chance at survival. "Milord, just where are we going?" Su Shiping and Su Anduin, flanking Wang Chong on the left and right, couldn't help but ask. From yesterday until now, the march had never ended. However, the two of them realized that Wang Chong's army was not moving in the same direction. There was no mistaking the fact that the army had fled northeast at the very beginning. But later on, this was no longer the case. Slowly, even the slowest officer began to realize that Wang Chong's army was not heading north at all. But if Wang Chong did not say anything, no one could ask. Even the highest-ranking officers in the army, Wang Yan and Xinyu Zhongtong, tacitly approved of Wang Chong's actions. In this entire process, neither of them had asked a single question. "You'll know in a little while," Wang Chong indifferently said, his eyes looking forward. He did not directly answer. The short battle had come to a temporary end, and the Mongolian army had been left far behind. But although Wang Chong appeared calm on the surface, the anxiety in his heart had not lessened in the slightest. The Annam Protectorate had far too many infantry and far too few warhorses. Even though he had already done his utmost to change his movements and confuse the Mengshi Yusang army's target, he had no choice. But it could only confuse them for a while. With the speed of the Uzun cavalry, they would soon catch up. Therefore, Wang Chong felt as if there was a needle on his back and a maggot in his bones. It was not just Wang Chong. In fact, this anxiety and uneasiness shrouded the entire army. Su Qichin, it's all up to you now whether I and my 100,000 men can survive or not. Looking at the dark clouds circling above his head, thoughts flashed through Wang Chong's mind. The battle was still far from beginning. Although an expert of the imperial great general level like Huoshu Wuzong had appeared in the battle last night, it had only been a brief encounter. Daluan Ruozhen had not appeared, nor had Jelifeng. The intelligent and courageous Mengshi Zhao Great General Duan Gechuan and his 300,000 soldiers, who were on the same level as Huoshu Wuzong, had not appeared. Moreover, there was still the 70,000 Uzun soldiers in the rear who had not yet arrived. The decisive battle between the Annam Protectorate and the Mengshi Yusang army was still far from here. But this decisive battle was not far away. Although he had already arranged for Su Yiqin to make all sorts of arrangements, Wang Chong had no idea if this move would have any effect. "Young master, we've arrived." As Wang Chong was in a daze, he heard a voice at his ear. The eagle was riding a buckskin horse, a massive eagle perched on his shoulder. Wang Chong opened his eyes and followed the eagle's gaze. He saw that on the horizon, beneath the roiling clouds, a towering mountain towered over the earth, imposing and majestic. Upon seeing this mountain, Wang Chong took in a deep breath and came back to his senses. All soldiers, advance at full speed. No one is allowed to stop. Anyone who disobeys will be dealt with according to military law. While his voice was still echoing through the air, Wang Chong urged his horse forward and charged forward. Behind him, the army of 100,000 seemed to be stimulated by something. Suddenly, they surged forward like a tide. On the majestic mountain, a few dozen zhang from the foot of the mountain was a horse-tethering stone. A stone tablet stood beside it, exuding a desolate aura. As Wang Chong rode past, he gazed at the stone stele with a complicated look in his eyes. "What's this?" A curious voice came from beside him. The eagle, Chen Shusun, Su Shiping, Su Onduan, and the other generals had all rushed over from the rear. A horse-tethering stone in a place like this was extremely strange, and the stone tablet beside it made it even stranger. More importantly, the words on the stone tablet were strange and twisted, and no one could read them. "This is a horse-tethering stone from the second year of the Great Han Dynasty's Yuan Feng." Wang Chong looked at the horse-tethering stone and stone tablet and sighed. It's been almost 1,000 years since then. As soon as Wang Chong finished speaking, everyone's expressions changed. The eagle, Chen Shusun, Su Shiping, Su Onduan, and the other generals all looked over, their eyes filled with astonishment. Wang Chong was able to determine that this was a horse-tethering stone of the Great Han, which was nothing special. But to be able to determine that it had been in the second year of the Great Han Dynasty's Yuan Feng was truly astonishing. This is the Han Dynasty's seal script, specially used to carve stone tablets. It's been more than 1,000 years, so it's normal that you don't recognize it. With a complicated expression, Wang Chong extended a finger, pointed at the stele, and began to read out the words on it one by one. Bahu General Guochang, under the orders of the Great Han's Emperor Wu, returns north to Kaidian. Tie the horse here and erect this stone tablet as a record. The words on the stone tablet were written in bold and vigorous strokes, and it inadvertently revealed a spirit of being in high spirits and looking down arrogantly upon the world. Wang Chong paused, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. Finally, he said the most important words. "This stone tablet has another name, the Kaidian Decree." Buzz! As soon as Wang Chong said this, everyone's expression changed. Even Xinyu Zhongtong and Wang Chong's father, Wang Yan, who had rushed over from behind, suddenly paled. The crowd finally understood why Wang Chong's expression had been so grave when he had passed by this stone tablet. Bahu General Guochang was a martial artist with a transcendent status. A titled general. Although this person's name was not well known in later history, not many people knew of him. But in the south, especially in the southwest of the empire, there was practically no one who did not know of him. The reason was very simple. Bahu General Guochang was the first person in the history of the Central Plains to open a path through Irai and conquer the six Zhao. During the Great Han Dynasty's Yuan Feng era, Bahu General Guochang returned with Great General Wei Qing after pacifying the Xiongnu in the northern desert. He led his army south to quell the rebellion in Nanyue. On the way back, Guochang received an order from Emperor Wu of the Han to pacify Yunnan. On the way back, Guochang stopped to look south and set up a stone tablet. This was the famous Han Wu Opening Yunnan tablet, also known as the Han Wu Opening Yunnan Order. When Guochang opened Yunnan, Mengshizhao was not called Mengshizhao yet, and Irai was not Irai either. Instead, it was called the Ancient Yunnan Kingdom. It was in the hands of this Bahu General Guochang that the power of the Central Plains dynasty expanded from the hinterland to the six Zhao of Irai. In the following dynasties, all the powers of Irai submitted to the Central Plains, and this was the root cause. It could be said that this Bahu general of the Han dynasty was the true first person to open up territory in Yunnan. Without this Bahu general, the Tang dynasty would not have been able to expand its influence to Irai. The people of the Annam Protectorate had been guarding the southwest for a long time, so they were naturally very familiar with Guochang's deeds. Thinking back to nearly 1,000 years ago in the Han dynasty, when this ancient general led the army into and out of Yunnan, high-spirited and vigorous, invincible. Thinking back to today's army looking north in panic, hurriedly fleeing for their lives, everyone's hearts were heavy and incomparably ashamed. Our Annam Protectorate has the duty of guarding the southwest. Now, not only have we disobeyed the imperial order, we have to abandon the city and flee. If General Guo were still alive, he would probably feel deep disdain for us. Xinyu Zhongtong raised his head to the sky and gave a long sigh, his heart filled with complex emotions. As the Annam Protector General, he could not escape the blame for the development of the southwest. As he stood before the tablet of Emperor Wu of the Han opening Yunnan, there was no one who felt worse than him. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.